What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Watching WandaVision, where we watch WandaVision. I'm Swim, and this is Renezuo.
Hello.
Today, we're going to be talking about WandaVision, like I said, so let's just get into it. So, the last episode opened up with Wanda waking up after expanding the dome, which I'm guessing there are lapses in her memory because she goes from, expanding the dome, and then she just wakes up in the bed the next morning, right?
I don't know if it's supposed to represent a gap in memory. A lot of the episode as a whole feels like she's trying to... It almost feels like regression. She's trying to push out any of the real moments that she's had in the last 24 to 48 hours. Anything that started to creep into her reality, instead of doing like the no or the rewind or anything like that, she's just putting on blinders and is like, nope. She comes downstairs. She's like, I'm not dealing with kids today. Nope. I'm in my pajamas all day. This is what we're doing. I'm eating, I'm having cereal and I'm lounging on the couch. Like, Vision is not even on her radar. She just doesn't want to deal with anything. It's almost like a complete denial of everything that's been going on. Them asking about Quicksilver, she's like, no, that's not your own. Don't worry about it. And they're like, what? And she's like, I don't have the answers, and I'm not gonna bother coming up with a workaround for this. I'm just gonna say no. Her whole attitude is like that.
She's gonna Aunt Viv it.
Yeah, as a parent, that actually resonated with me a lot. I was like, I've had those days where it's just like, no clever.
Just too many whys.
Yep. I'm not no clever parenting workarounds, no little explanations, nothing. I'm not doing it.
I feel you. I kind of wonder if the gaps in her memory, or not in her memory necessarily, but you know how we saw the cuts in episode 4, that what we saw inside of episode 2 wasn't necessarily what was being broadcast?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if on some level that's a representation of her consciousness.
I think so. I think that there are certain things that she is actively cutting out. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's just she's undoing things because she's trying to present something perfect. I think that there's a really good chance that when she undoes those things, they quickly vanish from her memory entirely. I think that she just moves on and is just like, nope, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore that thing that happened, that thing that doesn't fit my narrative. I'm just going to completely ignore that, and I'm just going to keep my little hex-shaped echo chamber going on its own, and anything that doesn't fit, I'm just going to selectively remove.
I feel you.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because, we've seen her exhibit that behavior outside of the hex. But this episode was one of the first times we ever saw her exhibit those emotions, inside the hex. In episode 1, 2, and 3, in 3 and 4, it kind of started to, or 3 and 5, it kind of started to break down a little bit. But in 1 and 2, she was this, bubbly, happy, over-energetic, and then she was presented as this, perfect, ideal mom. And then across the Halloween episode in the last one, we kind of saw that start to break down as, reality kind of presents itself to her and forces itself on her. And, I think that resulted in her being kind of depressed like she was. Because, like I said, we've never seen her be anything but Supermom 24/7. And, I kind of think back to, I think it's episode 3 or episode 5, the scene of Vision not wanting Agnes to take care of the kids. And I kind of wonder if that was, foreshadowing for what happened at the end of this one.
It could be, and I hadn't thought about it until just recently. But I think that it's very possible that Vision's ambivalence could be a foreshadowing. Maybe because he's already shown that when it comes to this manipulated reality, it's only so effective against him. And now that we know that Agatha was basically in the director's chair for a good chunk of this, it's possible that he wasn't just seeing through Wanda's influence, but maybe he was also getting a peek behind Agatha's influence as well. That he may have been getting sort of a peek at that and getting a sense that he doesn't want his children near her.
I dig that take. I definitely think that Vision is more aware of the world around him than he lets on. But I think what I mean by that is that like, so we know that Vision doesn't remember his life before Westview, right?
Mhm.
And what that kind of makes me think, and we know that Vision has the power to bring people back into the real reality of things so that they're not brainwashed anymore. And you can kind of selectively turn it on and off in people. So that makes me wonder if when Wanda brought back Vision, Vision has been dead for 5 years. He's been offline for 5 years, and his, like, quote unquote soul is destroyed if you wanted to consider the Infinity Gem as soul. So that kind of makes me think that Vision might not be the same Vision that died in Infinity War. Like, when they turned him on the first time, when Thor hit the hammer into him, he came up and he wasn't Jarvis. He didn't have the memories from Jarvis. He acted differently than the AI did, because the AI did have a little bit of a personality.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me think that, kind of like in the comics, when Vision died and then came back as the White Vision, he had to tell Wanda and his kids that basically he wasn't the same person, that he was a new Vision, because the dude lost his soul. And while I don't think the dude lost his soul here, I do think he's essentially a new Vision that isn't the same person that Wanda lost. And I think in those first 2 episodes, he was just as brainwashed as everyone else. And when Wanda told him to take the thing out of that guy who was choking, I think that kind of broke his hold a little bit. And his hold, whatever influence that Wanda has over the rest of Westview, she at one point had over Vision, but Vision is slowly but surely breaking it.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that his shaking of that influence that she has might be tied to the number of times he actively uses his powers, because he's had other, like, little funny moments where he uses his powers for something or other, and it seems to pick up. I had originally assumed that it was just his logic processing as a advanced AI is able to see through the inconsistencies of something that a human psyche might be able to turn a blind eye to. So Wanda can turn a blind eye to this. The other people who are, influenced can turn a blind eye to that. But he has a different way of thinking. When Shuri opens up the schematic for his, everything going on inside of him, he's got a very different way of being put together than, like, other AIs even. So he probably has a different way of thinking that is just very, very hard to convince. Like, you can bullshit him, but you can't bullshit him forever. Like, he's eventually gonna figure it out. If he had the memories of before going to Westview, it's entirely possible it wouldn't have worked at all. Because he has more information to work from. So because he doesn't have the context from before, and he doesn't have a reference point, that's the only reason I think that he's been fooled even this much.
And he didn't want to come back either. So that makes me think that if Wanda resurrected him, maybe if he didn't have those memories, maybe he was resentful towards her for bringing him back. And maybe wiping his mind was the only thing Wanda could do to correct that, as abusive as that is.
Yeah, I've thought about that one. I've also considered that maybe it's not quite as morbid as it's being kind of set up, because they are kind of setting up Hayward for being a more sinister figure. Like, he could go either way right now. They haven't really come down on either side right now. He could be someone who was trying to simply duplicate the technology that was Vision. Could have been that. But it's entirely possible he was just trying to reactivate Vision, and they definitely, I think they say as much, or at least that's the conclusion that, was it Wu and Monica come to.
Yeah, that's what Jimmy and Monica said.
Yeah, that's they come to that conclusion that he's trying to activate him. Although the Ultron theory is also feeds into that too. That's a pretty solid theory as well.
Yeah.
Because it might not be him trying to simply activate Vision as a person, but just trying to get the body to work so that some other person could occupy it, It could be that he was trying to do that. Whether it's him, whether it's another LMD, whether it's Ultron stored somewhere, it could be anything. But as far as it's entirely possible that he was already basically being activated and he was already set up. Wanda just took him, and her power feeding into him. Because it's interesting that so far, right now, I don't know what to make of Quicksilver, because the after credit scene kind of threw a monkey wrench in things a little bit. Agatha's influence throws a monkey wrench in it a little bit. But Quicksilver and Vision both have sort of a psychological representation of Wanda, in that the only things that they can seem to exhibit as they're dealing with Wanda seem to be related to the memories that Wanda has of them. So Vision doesn't remember anything before Westview because Wanda has a very selective and limited memory of what Vision was like before that. She has the romance, you know? She knew him romantically. But before he sweeps her off her feet at the age of Ultron, she didn't know anything about him. She didn't know about Jarvis. She doesn't know about any of that other stuff. So it makes sense that he doesn't have his whole backstory,
right?
You know, because if it's just her memories filling in his circuitry, he wouldn't have a complete picture of who he is. Similar to Quicksilver, I had assumed at the in the episode before the last one, that the reason Quicksilver's recollection and the way he was limited on certain things had to do with her memory. I kind of saw him as symbolically a part of her psyche that in some way acknowledges that there's something wrong. Something that is like her psyche bouncing ideas off of her, like, how long are you gonna do this? Like, is this, I mean, I think it's cool and all that you can do it, but like, how long is this gonna be a thing,
it's like you said, Agatha possessing Quicksilver threw a wrench into everything. Because I was thinking that Doctor Strange had pulled a Quicksilver from an alternate dimension, given him a base amount of information about the situation, and then sent him in, because that was one of the few psychological tools that could like help bring Wanda out of this. But then seeing Agatha control him, it makes me think, well, what if it wasn't Doctor Strange, if it was Agatha who pulled this guy from an alternate universe? Because I'm still not convinced that he's just an actor.
Yeah, it would be... I mean, he could be another magic user, because I think his eyes were doing like the purple eye effect. When after he's like, oh, Snooper's gonna snoop, and it cuts to Monica, Monica's eyes are going purple at that point. So it makes you wonder if Quicksilver is an alternate Quicksilver, or if he's an actor playing the part of Quicksilver, or if he's another magic user in league with Agatha, or potentially he's the entity that Agatha serves in disguise.
See, I like that Mephisto theory, that he's Mephisto or that he's Nightmare, especially because when he had the Quicksilver pointy hair, it wasn't necessarily like Quicksilver's pointy hair was in the comics. Like, obviously it was an homage to that, but it was also pointy like fucking devil horns.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm also thinking that with Quicksilver, there's another connection to Agatha that I thought was kind of interesting. So someone pointed out that you never see Quicksilver and the rabbit, Senior Scratchy, in the same room. And I thought that was really interesting because in the comics, Agatha Harkness has a son named Scratch, and Scratch is like an old school word for the devil. And, Senior Scratchy, Scratch, it's obviously a little reference there, but it makes me wonder if, maybe that's intended to be more than a reference, or is that just another one of the red herrings?
Yeah, they've got a lot of red herrings that really throw you off and make you wonder. There's a lot of stuff that they're showing you, but they're showing you in a way that is not clear. Like, some of it's clear, like meant to push you in one direction, so that you don't immediately see what's going on in the other direction. I think Mephisto, there's a lot of strong evidence for Mephisto, but there's a part of me that also doubts and is like, oh, because there's so much strong information, so many strong clues for Mephisto, that it's not going to be Mephisto. That, because that's how they've done things at this point, is like there's a lot of things that if there's strong evidence for it, it might not be the thing. And if there's weak evidence for the thing, it's like that's the thing that you should be latching onto. But now you're looking for everything in every single scene. That fly, that bug that was on the curtain, I immediately, when I saw that, I thought of all of the cosmic entities for Marvel have these crazy Tolkien levels of depth to them, of like where they come from, how old they are, all that stuff. It's all very, very intricate and deep. And Mephisto, I think, is like, at one point he's some sort of like fly type creature, and he lays his larva in another entity. I think it died or it was wounded or something like that. And that was where he got the bulk of his power. Like, that was when Mephisto starts coming into his own. But before that, he was like an insignificant fly type creature. And so I wonder if the fly was, it could just be a reference, or it could be that, you know, that's Mephisto, not necessarily like his whole being, you know, but that's the amount of him that he can project into reality right now. Because it plays into my overall theory that this whole thing with Wanda is basically a way of Mephisto getting into the MCU world. That the barriers are weakened after the Infinity Stones have been removed and everything's gone to hell. Multiple snaps, uses of the Infinity Stones, everything is just really shaky. But he still needs a little bit more to be able to get himself into the reality. So if he can put soul shards into children, you know, for the children, and maybe he can project a little bit of himself like into like creatures like the Fly to observe what's going on, make sure everything's, you know, running as planned, shit like that. It's entirely possible. But like I said, a lot of the stuff that points to Mephisto could easily just be them making like a little cheeky reference, and it's not actually part of the story.
Yeah, I feel like Mephisto could be like the biggest red herring of all in this.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have floated around Nightmare because before Sam Raimi took over for Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, Scott Derrickson, before the production on it started, before there was even a script, Scott Derrickson had said in an interview that he wanted to use Nightmare. So if they just reworked what Derrickson did before Derrickson left when Raimi came over, then it's possible Raimi took over with Nightmare already intended as the villain. And if Nightmare is going to be the villain for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which is already filming from my understanding and is near complete with filming, I'm not sure about that. But if that's the case, and Nightmare really is in that movie, maybe the reason they haven't announced him yet is because it would be revealed in WandaVision.
Maybe. Which
I think Nightmare is a little bit more of a likely contender than Mephisto, because Mephisto seems like one of those characters that you really want to save for Doctor Strange or Ghost Rider or like a big movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also think that, you know, maybe the reason they could use Mephisto to play devil's advocate, devil's advocate here for a minute, is that...
Okay, so I'll jump in, and if you remember, just cut me off. I think it's possible it could be both. You could have Nightmare in Multiverse of Madness. You could have Mephisto in WandaVision. It could be that you get a peek behind the curtain of these cosmic level threats in WandaVision. Like, oh, okay, we've got some stuff going on from outside of our reality that is now trying to push its way in from what happened with Thanos. Now we've got some real problems going on. So she has that little bit of experience. Multiverse of Madness rolls around. Doctor Strange starts dealing with this other guy. And Wanda's like, yo, I've actually dealt with an entity kind of like this, and it almost cost me everything. Let me help you out. Or maybe he seeks her out and is like, hey, I heard you dealt with something like this. Could you maybe help me out? So it could be something like that, because a lot of the following phases, I think we're going to deal with a lot more cosmic level entities. I know Kang the Conqueror is set for... What's he set for? Is he Young Avengers?
Was it Captain Marvel 2?
I can't remember which one. They cast him. It's the dude from Lovecraft Country.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, and they cast him as Kang the Conqueror. Now, Kang the Conqueror...
Oh, it's Ant-Man 3.
It's Ant-Man 3. Kang the Conqueror is a distant descendant of Reed Richards. So that means that your Fantastic Four stuff has to be coming soon. Fantastic Four stuff deals with a lot of cosmic level threats when it's not like just Namor or Doctor Doom. You've got things like Galactus and the Silver Surfer and stuff like that. And then you've got entities like Mephisto, I think just the overall tone of the villains coming up in these next phases that we're going to be dealing with is you're going to see a shift towards those cosmic level threats, towards the magic end of things. Because I think with...
Well, since you brought up Mephisto, that actually, I kind of remembered where I was going with that. So a lot of the reasons that we see things changed up a little bit, like we don't see as much talking about death or souls in the movies, is that the Chinese market is not a fan of that at all, and you probably wouldn't be able to drop the movies there. So if Mephisto is literally the devil, then if Disney Plus isn't in China, they could use him on Disney Plus if they can't use him in the movies. Well, which I think was one of the reasons they wanted to do Hellstorm and Ghost Rider as TV shows before they canceled the Ghost Rider show and only did Hellstorm.
Well, they have an out with Mephisto, because Mephisto isn't actually the devil. He just manifests as the devil. He manifests as the devil to play on the fears and superstition of humankind. And he does that. I can't remember if he's one of the Lords of Fear or Fear Lords. I forget what they call them. But I could see him being that. Nightmare is one of them as well. They got like a clique. All these cosmic entities have like these cliques that sort of overlap with each other. Like,
yeah, you mentioned they have like an Illuminati.
Yeah, Mephisto is part of a group called the Six-Fingered Hand. But he manifests himself as a different entity for the purposes of that, but he's in that group and he's in another one. Nightmare, I think, is in that group and in another one. They just have like these little cliques, and the reason why I think the clique could be also a possibility is because when you go into Agatha's little dungeon lair, you're looking around that room and you've got multiple symbols up on the wall.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
And if you look in the background of one shot, like just this one shot, there's this blue bird that's like the blue skeleton of a bird with like this purple projection behind it. And it just like, it's not very prominently placed. Like it's prominent as a set piece, but it's not given like any prominence in the shot like the books are, or like that one book is. But that makes me kind of think that, whatever that bird is, it freaked me out. Like, I love the look of it and the design of it. And, you know me, I'm a slut for purple and blue, but still.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm thinking about this clique is because those multiple symbols, Dormammu has his own symbol. Well, I don't know if it's his symbol or if it's the symbol for the dark dimension. It doesn't really matter. It's sort of a distinction that doesn't need to be made, because a lot of these entities are one and the same with their realms. They are the realm, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But you've got multiple symbols lined up. You've got a different one on the grimoire that you see. Grimoires are an interesting one that we can get into too, but I think what it is if you've got these entities trying to push their way into this reality, you might have multiple of them that are interested in that Agatha might not be just working as an agent for Mephisto. She could be working as an agent of whatever that group is. This would be like a supernatural, like cosmic Hydra. You've got a lot of big baddies waiting on the other side of this barrier, and it's Agatha's job to basically bend and twist Wanda into all these messed up shapes to weaken that barrier and allow those things to come through as a group, as a club. You know how we saw that the sorcerers and Doctor Strange were like basically a group of good sorcerers that kept magic in balance? Well, we know that Baron Mordo leaves because Doctor Strange started bending and breaking those rules, and Baron Mordo thought he should have been the next Sorcerer Supreme. So that makes me think that what if there was a rumor that Doctor Strange 2 would be about Baron Mordo going around and killing a bunch of wizards like he did in the after credits. And we know for a fact that Baron Mordo is going to be in Shang-Chi, and I don't know what's going to happen there. But we do know Shang-Chi comes out before Doctor Strange 2. Interesting.
So that makes me think that if Baron Mordo is going to be in Doctor Strange 2, and if Agatha Harkness is going to be in Doctor Strange 2, maybe Baron Mordo and Agatha are working together, or even expanding on that idea a little bit. Maybe there's an evil group of wizards, just like there's a good group of wizards that Doctor Strange is part of.
Yeah, it could be a thing where... Now, I think that there's room for a distinction in here where you could have the sorcerers that basically use what is essentially a human bound or a human a power or energy that is born of this realm and its mastery, but pulling down powers from other realms is a different classification. Like Caecilius isn't doing it for long, but you could look at that dude and be like, oh, that's not a sorcerer, that's a warlock. You know, Agatha and Mephisto and her husband Ralph, she could just be a witch. So we might actually see a distinction between like, oh, this is what constitutes a sorcerer, this is what constitutes a witch, this is what constitutes a warlock, you know, and different magical traditions. You could have it so that this guy, he's like, oh, you know, too many sorcerers, but as he's going and crusading and taking people down, he realizes, yo, we've got groups of flat out evil witches and warlocks out here, and I gotta take them down. And you got Doctor Strange like, yeah, I want to take them down too, but I can't condone your methods. So you've got a guy who is on and off again an ally, but he's also sort of a problem. He's gonna be a problem down the road, and you got to work with him now, but you know he's going to turn on you once he's cleared the board of these other dudes, you know? And that could just be kind of a nice long game for the Doctor Strange character arc. The Grimoire, I wanted to talk about the Grimoire because I was looking at a lot of people have compared it to the Darkhold. And
we know the Darkhold showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, the Darkhold is a thing in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it messes things up. But the Darkhold is a stupid, powerful artifact in the comics.
Oh, shit. This is just a little bit off topic. I'll let you get back to that in a second. But in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the LMD used the Darkhold to put everyone in a virtual reality where Hydra won in Winter Soldier.
Exactly.
So the Darkhold was already used to make an alternate reality type situation once.
Ada,
but going back to what you're saying?
Yeah, Ada used the Darkhold for that. And that's kind of an interesting parallel. And then you have this other Grimoire, which when they show it, it's glowing. It appears to be active, you know? So there's that.
And apparently there were a couple of books missing other than just the one that Caecilius stole in Doctor Strange. I can't confirm that because I haven't gone back to Doctor Strange and looked, but I saw someone mention that on Twitter.
Yeah, my wife and I actually watched Doctor Strange just yesterday. That is correct. There are some empty spaces. I don't know if that's supposed to mean there's things that are missing or we just didn't fill that part of the shelf yet. But yeah, there are some empty spots. And so the Darkhold in the comics is stupid old. So I don't know how to pronounce the dude's name. I'm gonna butcher it. Chthon or something like that.
Yeah, Chthon. Oh, something funny about that character. The dude who was Thanos' right-hand man and was instructing Loki in 2012's Avengers, he has the same name even though he's an alien and we're talking about like demon devil dude. And I'm kind of wondering if they could be the same guy because we saw him get killed by Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy. But you know, it could just be two separate characters with the same name.
Yeah. So Chthon, it's like Chthon. He is the first magic user on Earth that uses black magic. He took the
and Agatha like works for him, right?
I think she's tied to him. Yeah. Now he takes the sum total of his magical knowledge and inscribes it into the Darkhold. Okay. One page of the Darkhold being used for magical purposes can cause like natural disasters, massive jumps in power, all that crazy shit. And that's the Darkhold. The Darkhold also is featured in old shit like Kull the Conqueror and Conan the Barbarian. That's how old, like how far back in terms of real life writing time, like 1970s, 1960s, something like that.
That's a hell of a deep cut.
Yeah, that's a crazy deep cut, right? And that's the Darkhold causes all kinds of problems.
You know, it's funny when you read these old school Marvel books. Like I've been reading the Scarlet Witch and Vision comic from like the 80s or the 70s, I think. And they mentioned that Captain America fought these magic things in an issue of one of his books. and he gave it to Wanda and Vision as a gift when they were moving into their new house. And the first issue is these magical beings escaping this book, and Wanda and the Vision have to fight them, and they turn these trick-or-treaters into like monsters, and they have to fight the trick-or-treaters and, you know, put the demon back in the book. But that book really did first show up in a Captain America book, and Captain America fought the same dude. So it's just like, it's funny how you see that even if it's not a character or a villain, in these old school comics, you would see these plot devices exchange hands from character to character.
Yeah.
And I love that you're seeing that same thing in the movies now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the Darkhold could be a clue. I think that the Grimoires are like a different classification of things that we're going to be dealing with. Different entities, major entities within the MCU, like the cosmic threats, could have their own books and grimoires that are special to manifesting their will in the world. Because the other name for the Darkhold is the Book of Sins. So you could have different books that have like different themes to them, you know. But I don't know. It's entirely. I know it's supposed to be like, a lot of people see it and see that book and they're like, oh, it's the Darkhold. I'm like, nah, I think we're dealing with a classification of item, of like special item that these different entities have. And we might get into, you know, in the MCU where the Darkhold came from. And then we're going to be like, oh, Mephisto's got one. Nightmare's got one. All these dudes, they each have one, so that mortals can, you know, use this as a manual for putting their influence into the world. I mean, the thing for Dormammu was in that book, in the Ancient Ones place. So you could call that a book by Dormammu as well. Like it I don't see any reason why you would have all of this shit for Dormammu in there, of like accessing the dark dimension and his symbols and all that stuff, if it wasn't his book. You know, like, why would you have that in there?
You know, Grant Morrison has this concept in his books, and it's that when you see a comic in a DC Comics book, and a character's reading a comic, it's not actually a comic. What they're reading is the reality of another world, and throughout the multiverse, you can read, like, looking through a window into another world by reading a comic. And it makes me wonder if maybe these magic books work the same way in the MCU.
Yeah. It's entirely possible. I'm interested to see, like, I can't wait to see what happens with this book, because I'm kind of like big into like magic and wizards, shit like that. Any game or universe that presents me with that stuff, I latch onto that stuff. The only
well, I think you're going to be a happy camper the next few years, because it seems like Marvel is going all in on the magic stuff. Like how the first phase, like the only magic we saw was Thor, and they were really eager to be like, oh, it's not magic, it's alien technology that's so advanced it looks like magic.
Right.
And then in the second movie, they're just like, nah, fuck it, Loki's magic, dude.
Well,
his mom's magic, they're all fucking magic.
I know.
And now we're seeing them peel that shit back and like go all in on the magic stuff.
If I recall correctly, you're more of a DC guy than you are a Marvel guy.
Yeah, 100%.
But in Marvel, they have a hierarchy of power. You have at the very bottom, you've got human-based powers like Captain America. Then I think it goes mutant powers and metas, or maybe it's technology. Those are two kind of interchangeable ones.
Right, you kind of work up through the Hulk, like then you get to the top tier where you get like the Hulk and Franklin Richards, the Phoenix, stuff like that.
At the very top is magic. And so you have sort of it's a loose rule set that the Marvel writers use as to what trumps what in a fight. Now, one of the reasons why I've always disliked the Hulk in the comics is because the Hulk completely breaks all of those rules with very little explanation and very little context and very little other than the Hulk is angry.
Well, I know it's more current now, but the current explanation is that whenever he turns into the Hulk, or whenever he dies, he goes through the green door, which is a portal to like a hell-like dimension that all the gamma creatures are from.
Yeah.
So him turning into the Hulk is more like a demon possessing him. So they've effectively retconned Hulk and made the Hulk magic now.
Yeah, they did that because there was a lot of a lot of issues coming up with them basically saying, "Oh, this is our rule set," and then everyone was like, "Well, what about the Hulk?" Well, the Hulk is just mad, you know, and it's like, so they basically have, they've had a few writers in the last few years who have basically been paying close attention to the criticism and trying to rework things in a way where everything fits that structure and things make sense. So
man, that's one of my favorite things about comics, that have your cake and eat it too mentality. Like, it results in some shit where it's like, you know, Spider-Man is always a teenager, these characters can't get married or they can't stay married. And, you know, we have a bunch of regressive shit like that that gets really frustrating to deal with as a long-term reader.
Yeah.
But, like, just for the sheer fact of, I go into Superior Spider-Man, and I know Doc Ock isn't always going to be Spider-Man. Like, this isn't the new status quo. It feels better reading a book like that, knowing it's going to go back to normal.
I know some people are kind of frustrated with that because they're like, oh, this is just a stunt, it's going to go back to normal. And it's like, yeah, but some people want that. So
yeah, like, I hear a lot of people talking good shit about Jim Gordon's time as Batman. I never read that far into the Snyder run, but I hear a lot of people talking about that. And they say some of the best New 52 Superman stuff before Rebirth is when he loses his powers, and, well, not loses his powers, but, like, he goes, like, Super Saiyan or whatever and lets off that sun blast.
Yeah.
Then he, like, shaves his head and has a walk across America or whatever.
Yeah.
People say that's one of the best arcs of New 52 Superman.
That sounds interesting. I have to check that out.
Yeah, me too. I've always wanted to read it, but just never have.
So I think that with Marvel, this underpinning rule set that they have is also kind of informing the phases of the MCU. I think we've basically closed the book on the technology phase. You know, we had 3 phases of technology-centric stuff. It dies with Iron Man. I don't think all the technology stuff is going away because you have Armor Wars and, you know, some other stuff coming out. Like, but well,
we went from Iron Man to space.
Right.
So, like, we went from high-tech suit to sci-fi. So we've taken technology as far as you can logically take it until you go to, like, time travel. And well, I mean, shit, they did fucking time travel.
Yeah, I think the technology aspect of the MCU has had center stage for basically 3 phases, and now we're going to shift. I think it's going to go to magic, and I think it's going to stay on magic for a little while, and we'll still have some other science stuff, but we're going to have some magic-y shit. I don't think it's going to last as long as the technology stuff. I think we're going to have our magic thing, and then from magic, we're going to transition, bam, mutants. Now we're going to go into mutant powers. I think they're going to lay a lot of track work for mutants, though, because I hope that they've realized that the best way to introduce the mutants now, at this point, is going to be to introduce them one at a time before you make them X-Men.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you got to have a Wolverine spin-off movie, and then a movie about the First Class, like, not like the First Class movie First Class, but like Bobby, Jean, you know, those characters, and then have them cross over. Like, in the second X-Men movie, the second X-Men movie could adapt, like, giant-size Avengers, and then you could have Nightcrawler and Wolverine and Storm introduced there. But you really do got to do all this separate and slow. Like, you really got to build your way up to it. And I know that we've been hearing rumors that Wolverine is going to fight the Hulk, and that Wolverine is going to team up with Captain America in a Wolverine movie. Now, personally, I don't know, like, this is going a little bit off topic, but I'll loop it back around. Personally, I don't necessarily want to see Captain America and Logan alone. I've always wanted them to do an Invaders show where it would be Captain America, Bucky, the Howling Commandos, and every episode they would team up with someone, like maybe the World War II Black Panther, or the World War II Iron Fist, you know, even Namor and the Human Torch, like the android Human Torch, which in the comics, that was the original base for Vision's body that Ultron modified. And that's why they named their son... Shit, which one is it? It's the one that's Quicken. Or Wiccan. It's the one that's Wiccan. Yeah. Tommy? Yeah, Tommy is named after the Human Torch's creator.
Yeah.
Thomas Hammond, I think.
I think... depending on how well Winter Soldier does, like as far as a character standing on his own, essentially, I think you could have room for flashback sequences with him, and you could even have like a quick thing, because there was a thing in Ultimates where Captain America recalls having met Logan before, and they called him Lucky Jim. and they call
Yeah, and he's working with Nick Fury too. Nick Fury's one of the Howling Commandos in the Ultimate Universe.
So they called like he remembers him from World War II, and they called him Lucky Jim because at the time there was no they didn't have an explanation as to why Logan was essentially, or Jim was able to basically charge into a hail of bullets and come out unscathed from their reckoning, you know, like he's completely fine, you know, wow, this guy's really lucky, when really it's just, you know, fucking Logan drops and rolls into a ditch for like 5 minutes to let his healing factor do its thing, and then he crawls out wiping the blood off like, I'm all right guys, it's fine, it's just a scratch, it's not nearly as bad as we thought it was, let's go. I think, you know, you could take something like that and put it into a Winter Soldier flashback, and Winter Soldier be like, man, at the time we just thought you were lucky, but now this makes sense. Like I think that'd be funny.
It's interesting you mentioned that story, because if I'm remembering right, in the and I could have this completely wrong, so I mean, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, I guess. But if I'm remembering right, in the Ultimate Universe, the mutants were never born, like, there's only one real mutant, and that's Logan. He's the only person that was born a mutant. All the rest of the mutants, they took Logan's genes and Weapon X, and then somehow over the course of 50 years, his genes were put into the population, creating mutants. So Logan is the only, like, real mutant. And I kind of wonder if they could go that route in the MCU. I don't think they will. I think they're going to go with Wanda magicking, like, reverse House of Emming the mutants back.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thought.
I don't remember that particular story thread. I don't, because I kind of moved in and out of the X-Men fandom over the years, depending on who was writing. I don't know if that was the thing that was introduced. I know that for a time, Apocalypse was considered the first mutant in Sabanur. And he was considered the first mutant to have existed at that time. Like, before that point in time, there were no mutants. And I know that...
And I think they retconned it now. I think they're like alien mutants or something.
Well,
I forget what they did.
Mutants, the way I understand it in the comics now, is mutants are an evolutionary, like, offshoot of the Eternals. And I think that's why they're introducing the Eternals in the MCU, is they're laying some of that groundwork. But
yeah, because the Eternals, like, you're either born an Eternal, like a normal looking human, or you're born a deviant, like Thanos.
Yeah.
And the deviants are similar to the Skrulls genetically, which is why Thanos looks the way he does.
And I think it was a Celestial that bled into the Earth, and the Celestial's blood makes its way into some of humanity. And years after evolution has basically taken its course on various things, you get someone like Apocalypse who shows up. And then slowly, over thousands of years, as evolution is taking its course, you get another mutant, and then another one, and another one. And it starts rapidly ramping up after that. In the grand scheme of things, you know, for Eternals, for Celestials, it's a blink of an eye. You know, but for us, it's like, oh, that's thousands of years. That took forever to show up. But for them, no, not so much. It's pretty quick.
Oh yeah, and I can't remember. They might make this canon, they might not. This might be from Earth X, so I'm not sure if it's in the 616 universe. But the Celestials are using planets that have life on them as eggs. So there's like a baby Celestial inside the 616 Earth, and the reason Galactus is going around destroying planets is to kill the baby Celestials before they're born. He's basically aborting Celestials when he eats the planets.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't know
right?
about that one.
So when they kill Galactus, Franklin Richards becomes the second Galactus in Earth X.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Some of the stuff I've seen is like a lot of that huge cosmic level stuff that I'm talking about, that really deep Tolkien-esque stuff. Everything has a role, and it's all cyclical. You've got these different universes that have manifested. I want to say that the current 616 is the 7th universe or the 8th universe, something like that. And then you have an entity that sits at the top of it, and they're referred to as the 7th or 8th something or other. It's crazy. I don't know how much of this we're going to get into with the MCU, but it seems...
Oh, we're only scratching the surface here.
I think they're moving it in that direction, because if you're involving entities like Mephisto, like Nightmare, the Eternals. I am fairly certain. So, what's his name?
And if they ever like feel the need to do a hard reboot, like not like a soft reboot to like pretend the mutants were always there, but I mean like a hard reboot where we say Iron Man, Avengers, none of that shit ever happened, and we completely reboot the universe, New 52 style. Setting up all this lore and mythos gives them an out to do all that later on down the road, like 10, 20, 30 years. Now, I don't think they'll go that route. I think they'll make an alternative ultimate MCU. But, you know, just a thought.
What's the name of the god of the symbiotes again? I always
forget
his name.
Well, I think that I'm trying to remember what his exact role. He is the god of the symbiotes, but he's also like an extension of some demon that made a sword. It's really complicated and confusing, some of the Null shit.
No. Okay, so Null is, maybe just look it up real quick.
One of the things I think is interesting while you do that is that Marvel is introducing all these new Elder Gods, right?
Yeah.
Like Hulk has the one below all, and apparently the opposite of that is the one above all. And then in Venom, you're introducing Null. Thor is doing something with Dark Gods. I'm not sure what that is because I haven't read Donny Cates' Thor yet.
Yeah.
And then, but the symbiote, they also revealed something regarding Captain Universe in a new issue of King in Black. And I'm not going to spoil what that is, but basically it reveals that Captain Universe plays a role in this cosmic mythos too, which is a really old fucking reference. Like, the last time I think we saw Captain Universe show up was in Jonathan Hickman's 2013 New Avengers run.
Yeah.
That culminated in Secret Wars. That was the last time we ever saw Captain Universe in like a significant way, I think. Maybe he's shown up in like Guardians of the Galaxy since then, but I don't know.
So, all right, so Null. I think Null could be a good person that they're leading up to, because in the lore for Null at one point, like before he was the thing, it was happening between the 6th and 7th universe when the Eternals or the Celestials intruded into his realm. It was the Celestials, I think. They intruded into his realm, and for their intrusion, Null basically cut off the head of a Celestial. Well, we've already seen the head of a Celestial just floating in space. It's nowhere. That's the head of a Celestial. So I think that Null could be something that we're leading up to. I think he could be the next Thanos level thing that we deal with, because Marvel is showing more of an interest in integrating more Spider-Man, more Venom. Let's do Spider-Verse. Let's do, Maximum Carnage. They're pulling more of these things in, and I think we're eventually going to lead up to Null, because Gore the God Butcher is being played by Christian Bale in Thor Love and Thunder. So
yeah, when Batman is a villain in the MCU, you know shit's gonna hit the fan. Just going off of Homecoming.
And Gore the God Butcher is the guy you were talking about, where
he had a hand in like creating Null and the sword that ended up becoming the shadow of the symbiotes or something. So I'm not exactly sure on the mythos.
Yeah,
100%.
So it's the other way around is basically after. So Null cuts off the head of a Celestial, uses the head of a Celestial to create the All Black. The All Black is his sword that he basically goes on a rampage. He's killing other gods. At some point, Gore comes across a fight between Null and some other god. Null is badly injured. He takes the All Black for himself, and he has this petty little vendetta against the gods because they didn't answer his prayers when he was growing up all shitty. Gore goes on his own thing. Gore has this massive story arc. After he's defeated, it's revealed that Null was basically using him for the whole time. Again, it's very Tolkien-esque because, in a way, Gore is essentially your Sauron. Like, everyone's like, oh, Sauron's such a crazy badass. Like, we spent like hundreds of years fighting Sauron and defeating him, and he's just a general. Like, he's just a general that serves a more powerful evil entity, and that's what Gore the God Butcher is. He's just a dude who was a cat's paw or a puppet for Null. So I think WandaVision as a show is moving us firmly in that direction of these massive old lore cosmic threats. So
right, because Marvel has this thing where they're constantly ramping shit up. Like, you had Loki going from being a big bad that was just a political villain to being the big bad of Avengers. And then you ramp that up with Age of Ultron, where Ultron is causing even more devastation than Loki was. And then you have fucking Thanos kill half the fucking universe.
Yeah.
And how the hell do you escalate from that? Like, you can't have Avengers 5 and just do fucking Masters of Evil, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just have all the villains team up to fight the Avengers. That should have been movie 1 or 2, you know? And so, like, you literally have to reach the point where, like, you adapt something like the Korvac saga and maybe cross over with Guardians of the Galaxy while you do it, you know?
Yeah, I think the Loki show could be laying track for King the Conqueror because it's a time travel show.
Yeah, and they've got, I think it's the TVA, which is like the time travel. It has something to do with these guys that are like essentially Time Lords, but for Marvel.
Yeah, the Time Variance Authority.
Yep,
yeah,
that's it.
They're going to be pretty interesting to see. I think.
And, you know, maybe if they have something to do with the multiverse, you know, maybe that could even tie into WandaVision a little bit. Because I don't think it's that crazy to imagine that Loki could show up in Doctor Strange or Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah,
especially considering that's a show that takes place in what I'm assuming is an alternate timeline, like the one that they went to in Endgame.
Yeah. I think that all... okay, so this crazy rabbit hole that I've kind of, like, you know, pushed us down into... the whole point of my rabbit hole thing and these other cosmic entities is I don't think that if it's Mephisto that we don't also get Nightmare. I think that we could be just getting both. I think we could just be getting all of these villains coming out of the woodwork. I think that there's a power vacuum, that the barrier that protected our reality from these outsiders and these threats is so weakened that it's going to be a free-for-all. It's a fire sale on reality right now, and you're going to have a bunch of entities coming in one after the other trying to get their piece.
Fuck. And you know, it's a lot more interesting. Like, we've seen Doctor Strange fight demons over and over again. The same episode where Doctor Strange teams up with Spider-Man to fight Dormammu is the same episode where Doctor Strange teams up with Hulk to fight the demon in the episode of Hulk.
Right.
So we've seen this before. We've seen Doctor Strange do this shit. So it's a lot more interesting to see Doctor Strange in the MCU caught in the middle of a battle between two evil ancient entities than it is to see them take on that ancient entity directly.
Mm-hmm. I think so. There was this other thing too that I wanted to bring up to you. My wife put this theory out, and apparently this is one she's been sitting on for a while, and she thought she had mentioned it to me, and no, it only came up at the last thing. So she's been noticing how there's a particular color coding going on in WandaVision right now. Wanda's powers are red. Reality Stone. She's reshaped reality. Monica comes through the barrier, has all of her stuff mutated, gets powers similar to Captain Marvel. Her powers are blue. Space Stone.
Oh, and you know something, since you mentioned Captain Marvel, I'll let you get back to that in a second. She hears Carol Danvers' voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, she says Carol. But in the memory, she calls Carol Mom, which I thought was kind of interesting. You know, maybe they were repurposing that line to apply to her actual mom.
Yeah.
Or maybe Carol and, you know, they were in lesbians, you know, who knows? Which I like that theory.
Yeah, I've always, you know, to be honest with you, I have always thought of Carol Danvers as a gay character, not in the sense of like, oh, ham-fisted representation or even a fetishization. She always just felt like a gay character to me, like for a long time.
Yeah, I'm pretty inclined to agree.
But I guess,
like, I mean, I would have those friends that would like play up being straight, and then like, you know, like later on, you know, they get to be 25 and they come out, you know, as being a lesbian. You know, I get those same vibes from Miss Marvel, like not Kamala Miss Marvel, but Carol Miss Marvel in the comics when she was still Miss Marvel.
Yeah,
especially like you get those vibes really heavily when you read the books with Jessica Drew and Carol, in my opinion.
Apparently, the writers for Carol Danvers are like adamant that she is a straight character. So I don't know.
Well, they wouldn't be able to sell action figures of her in China if she wasn't.
Like, so I mean, we'll see what she does, but so yeah, anyway, the color thing.
Carol Danvers is a lesbian, but only in the TV shows.
So with the color thing, you get Monica, who in the comics was a Captain Marvel. You know, she even has that outfit that is kind of similar to her Captain Marvel outfit in the comics. She gets the blue powers of Captain Marvel. Wanda has red powers of like the Reality Stone, and Agatha has purple powers. So is she like so my wife was basically pointing out that these characters all have powers that thematically have a connection to their respective Infinity Stones. You know, that there could be a color coding to what these powers do, but it's interesting to see that in action.
You know, I wasn't all in on that theory until I saw Agnes, because for whatever reason, I thought Agnes was going to have, like, green magic powers, because it makes sense, you know, red and green are opposite contrasting colors.
Yep.
You know, that's why you see them paired together so much, like Freddy Krueger or Christmas. But, so it would make sense that the villain is the opposite color of Wanda, you know, red versus green. But seeing her be purple is kind of weird, because those colors kind of, like, blend together. But then when you see... when you see Monica as blue, you know, I really do think there's some credence to that theory, more so than I did the first time that she had mentioned that.
Yeah,
because I remember her saying that on your server.
Yeah, she threw it out there, and initially, like, I admit I dismissed it at first. I was like, no, and then I was like, after it sat for a second, I was like, well, maybe.
Yeah, right?
No.
It's one of those things that it sinks in your brain over the few days. It's a fucking brain worm.
Yeah, so I like, the more I think about it, the more I like it. I don't know if that's the intent. I don't know if that's something that they would do. But also, I think you had pointed out at some point, the Infinity Stones do remake themselves. So do we have 3 avatars of Infinity Stones sitting around in WandaVision right now? That'd be pretty crazy. That'd be kind of cool, but it'd be pretty crazy, you know? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting that they all choose to channel themselves on Earth. Maybe that's because that's where the snap took place initially.
Yeah.
And they're like, so the first snap was on Earth to make everyone disappear. The second snap was on another planet. So maybe they like a respawn. They respawned to that same planet they snapped from initially. Or alternatively, maybe when Iron Man snapped with the other Infinity Gauntlet, it gave them like a cosmic symbol or a place to reassemble. You know what I mean?
Like a beacon that they kind of honed in on. Like, this is where it's going down.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, if we're tapping into the multiverse, I don't know if this was supposed to be a representation of the multiverse, of the timeline, or of the multiple altered realities that are layered on top of each other. But when Monica was going through the force field, that scene was just so badass.
Yeah.
Like, from the visuals of it, the cinematicness, just hearing her memories, it was the same type of scene that you would see in Flash on CW when the Flash is going through the Speed Force. But it looked so much fucking better here.
Yeah.
Like, it looked beautiful.
It was great.
And it made me think of that one page from that Green Lantern event where all the Green Lanterns are fighting this dude, and he separates them, and you see all of their past costumes and stuff layered on top of each other while they're, like, going through, like, a head trip. And it really reminded me of that, even though, you know, I'm sure that they weren't referencing that at all. But, you know, it just made my mind kind of think of that. And I love that her costume was a throwback to her time as Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
That shit was badass.
It feels nice and organic. It's actually, I really liked when they when they come up with a reason why someone has an outfit other than, like, Spider-Man sitting down and sewing up his own outfit because he's Spider-Man. You know, I like when they're like, oh, this has an explanation. So, you know, Captain Marvel's outfit is just a recolor of the Kree uniform that she had originally. She recolors it, and it's sort of like, this is who I was, but now this is who I am. You know, I like that idea. I like that Monica's costume could just end up being a repurpose of a sword astronaut outfit. You know, this is where I come from, but now, you know, this is part of who I am. You know, it like, her powers are going to be interesting. They've already kind of like hinted at the whole photon thing, which is kind of cool.
Oh my god, when fucking Wanda threw her up in the air and pulled her down and she landed in the fucking Deadpool superhero pose.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, that was such a badass moment.
Well, even like I thought it was cool when she comes through the barrier and she looks up and she's seeing into the ultraviolet spectrum, and she can like, even beyond the ultraviolet spectrum, like she can see farther into the EM spectrum than other people, and she can see how it's warping, how reality is being warped around her. So I thought that was really cool and a really good kind of like you know, reference to her powers as Photon. Because as Photon, she has those abilities. She has a deeper mastery, not just of light, but of the farther into the EM spectrum. And they show some of that stuff. You know, when she hits the ground, it's a very kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like her powers evoke like wavelengths, you know, like it looks like it has that same effect. When she hits the ground, it looks like like the illustration of what they do for wavelengths. It was kind of like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. Monica as a character as a whole has gotten much more interesting over time. Initially I was a little like so on.
Yeah, like I got the point, you know, she's supposed to be like this. She's a self-insert character that you're supposed to view the world through the eyes of. That way, you know, people explain the world to this character, and then vis-a-vis, you know, the audience understands the world and the context of what's happening. But it's really neat how in such a short amount of time and with so few appearances in the actual show, like she's changed so much and grown so much from that audience point of view character into a full-fledged fucking superhero in her own right. Like, if Brie Larson stepped down from Captain Marvel tomorrow and they killed her off in the movies, I can see
Monica step.
Yeah, I can see Monica taking over for her easily.
Yeah, you've got one on deck, you know? Like it's already
exactly.
She's already set to go.
It's like Terrence Howard walks on set and he sees Don Cheadle there and starts getting nervous.
I thought like they've done a pretty good job with her character so far, but she's, you know, I think it's because she represents a different aspect of grief on the show, because basically the show, as interesting and as funny as it is sometimes and as dark it is, it's grief. The show is about grief and dealing with loss. And you've got...
I never thought of it. They're dealing with the same damn thing, too.
Yeah.
Like, they both came back at the same time. They both came back after the snap and found out that their closest loved one was gone.
Yeah.
I never even thought of it on that level.
Yeah, they both popped back at the same time. They both lost the person who was closest to them. But, whereas we're led to believe that Wanda went out and just... like essentially dragged her lost loved one out of the grave, and you know, Weekend at Bernie's, you know, like just puppeting him around.
Weekend at Visions.
Yeah, Weekend at Visions. Monica is like, no, I'm gonna get back to work and I'm gonna take what my mom built and I'm gonna move it forward, you know, and she's dealing with that grief. So you've got Hayward, who is also kind of this person who represents a different aspect of that grief, but he is like, yo, we're gonna kill it, we're gonna get rid of it, we're gonna burn it, you know. He wants to destroy whatever it is that Wanda is going through, and his aggressive approach to grief and getting past it only makes it worse. Whereas Monica's approach to grief, she wants a soft touch. She wants to talk to Wanda. She wants to work with her. She wants to relate to her and to be like, I know what you're dealing with, you know? And that's the only thing that has even come close to touching Wanda in any way on an emotional or mental level. And as soon as she starts to get through to her and start to like kind of peel away those layers of that Wanda has surrounded herself in comes Agatha to be like, no, I'm taking her away, you get the hell out of here, you know. Right.
And every fucking time Wanda starts to question things around her, Agatha shows up and like distracts her.
Yep. Agatha can pop in and get things either back on track or put them in another direction, because she's the one who's running everything from the background. But as soon as
like when she says, do you want to take it from the top? And then Wanda gets confused.
Yeah.
That's a red herring. She's trying to make Wanda think that Wanda is in control when in all reality, she's controlling Wanda.
Yeah, she's been the one who's behind everything. And I think, I don't know if it's been an overt control. I think they basically put her into a situation. They created a playground for Wanda, or they showed Wanda how to create her own playground, and they basically let her like run wild. And they're like, if she goes, we can kind of nudge her in different directions to get what we want, but we've got to keep everybody out. We need to keep her in this state of self-delusion. We need to keep her self-indulgent. We need this continuous denial and self-corruption. Otherwise, we won't get what we want. Whatever the end game is for them, they need her to be completely consumed with her own self-indulgence and grief. That's what they need. And anyone else who threatens that has got to be pushed out immediately. Agatha knew exactly what she was and who she was when she saw Monica. She looked right at her and she's like, oh shit, we have a powered person inside the bubble. This needs to be handled immediately. I've got to bring her down.
Yeah, even as far back as like episode 2, she says she doesn't belong here. She doesn't have a home.
Yeah. So that they've been trying to push her. Initially, she was just a person from outside the bubble. She didn't have powers, so it's like, yeah, we got to do something about her. We got to get her out of here. That's one thing. Now she's got powers, so now she's like, I got to get you down to my basement, give you another shot of that magic cocktail, give you another dose, give you a little booster shot, and they're gonna send her on it. Like, I don't know if Wanda's gonna come out of that basement like as magically berserk. I don't know if her and Vision are going to end up fighting. I don't know if Monica is going to have to try and stumble her way through her powers before getting smacked around. It's entirely possible. It doesn't work on Wanda, but they get control of Monica instead.
I think it's possible things could reset back to the 30s with the next episode.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. But
because we saw the clip where it keeps flashing through eras, and obviously we saw a little bit of that, like them teasing that with just the singular items that were glitching out and changing forms.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that comes from Wanda expanding the shield or expanding the hex. She only has so much like bandwidth, I guess, to go around.
Yeah. And
expanding that field has fucked with her bandwidth. And I think that Wanda in general is just more powerful naturally as a wizard or as a sorcerer or whatever you call it, magic users in the MCU. I think she's more powerful, and that, she needs to be the antenna, mm-hmm. right? And Agatha is using her as an antenna, and Agatha is feeding the commands into Wanda, but she also has to figure out how to keep Wanda happy and sedated at the same time.
Yeah, it's possible that Wanda has like an infinite or a finite level of power to mm-hmm. sink into this reality. It could also be a representation of her mind sort of either becoming exhausted with the upkeep, or with again going back to the grief thing. It could be her mind's attempt to like, okay, we're going to start acknowledging the problems here, and things start to break down because the whole thing is built on her denial of coping with her loss. And it could be that as she starts it's almost like the last episode that we had here. This was almost her unwilling to engage with her own creation. She didn't want to engage with the boys. She didn't want to engage with Vision. She didn't want to do anything.
Right, she was depressed. She wanted to stay in bed all day.
Yeah, so she was so much less willing to engage with the thing that she had created. She was exhausted. She's tired. And it could just be like, because she's not engaging with this this reality, this fabrication of hers, maybe that's what was causing it to start to break down. That the novelty of it, the appeal of it has started to wear down. Part of her is starting to realize, I can't do this forever. How long could I possibly keep this up? There's 3,000 people in here, like that,
going back to things that are feeding Wanda's power. We didn't see things glitch out until Vision tried to leave, right? And I don't know if it is, I don't know if it isn't. Let's just say, for the sake of this theory, the Vision's like stone in his head really is the Mind Stone, which would mean we've got red, blue, purple, and yellow. So we've got 4 stones inside of the hex if your wife's theory is true.
Yeah,
that's maybe the Vision and him being close to Wanda helps make her power stronger just by being within the vicinity of a gem or within the vicinity of another gem.
Yeah, even if you were not using the Infinity Stone, I don't remember where it's mentioned. It could be the comics, could be movies. Vibranium is a great amplifier for certain things. It's either Ultron mentions it or Ulysses Claw mentions it, that in certain forms, vibranium is a great amplifier for energy. Shit, it might even have been Black Panther that they mention it. It's in one of the things where they're talking about how you can take what's already a good power source and you introduce vibranium to it and you get so much more energy from it. So it could be, I mean, you could have it just be something so simple as someone got inside Wanda's head, we need you to go get Vision because this will keep you distracted, you know, by you playing around with Vision, but we need him in here because he's an amplifier for your powers. Like, he keeps everything running. He might be the core of the hex. Like, she is basically the person who programs it, but he might be the person who provides that extra amplification. Him trying to leave it might not be possible so long as it's active, because
and you know, we saw it pulling him back in.
Yeah, it pulls him back in. It doesn't pull her back in, and yeah, it doesn't pull Monica back in, even though it's altered her. But Vision, it pulls back in. So it might need him.
Was that the stones, like, we could still see the stone. It wasn't like he was glitching out or that was glitching out when he was leaving the hex, like we see happen to, like, say, the vehicle that came back through the hex where it was half a truck and half that space rover. Like, that didn't happen to Vision. Something very different happened to him, where it almost looked like when people got ashed in Infinity War, but not quite. It's like he was burning, like, his flesh, like. And it makes me think that something inside of that hex is tied to his soul. And, you know, Darcy mentioned specifically that, you know, Vision cannot leave, which we've seen isn't true for Wanda, isn't true for Monica. You know, we've seen people come and go twice. And, you know, we've seen even that the truck go in and then come back out changed, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, when things go in and they get changed inside, and then they come back out, they don't change back to the way they were. That's something that's worth noting, because we saw that with the truck that was half truck, half moon rover, and we also saw it when Monica got thrown back out, and she was like, she had her full 1970s outfit on inside the hex.
The truck moon rover thing was kind of a huge letdown. I'm not gonna lie, like, because for 2 episodes they had Monica kind of like play up like, oh, I know someone who can get me back in there, you know, and you're like, who's it gonna be?
So technically we still haven't seen that big reveal yet, and Paul Bettany keeps saying that there's a secret actor that he's really always wanted to work with, and a lot of people are thinking that that could be either Doctor Strange, it could be an Avenger, or it could be the Scientist. And, you know, there's a possibility that there is no Avenger, and that the Scientist and the person Paul Bettany's referring to could be the same person.
I thought the aerospace engineer that they were talking about was the military person that she met on site when they got there. I thought that's who that was supposed to be, and that felt like a letdown.
But... no, it's just supposed to be someone that works from them, from my understanding.
Okay.
I'm thinking that the person that still shows up, because they didn't say a name or name drop anyone, so it's supposed to be like a big reveal from my understanding. A lot of people are saying Blue Marvel, and I'm not that familiar with him, but I know he dated Monica in the comics, or at least I think he did. And, you know, some people are saying Reed Richards, which it would be a ballsy fucking move to bring in Reed Richards.
It would be.
Reed Richards. Reed Richards.
Reed Richards.
Riding the cosmic ways.
Yeah.
But, like, I think this is the reason I think it could happen. So, Jennifer Lawrence was spotted going to Australia, and at the same time as she was in Australia, there were rumors floating around that she was going to be cast as Sue Storm. Now, those rumors have been shot down since then. But something worth noting is that Thor Love and Thunder is filming in Australia right now. and there are rumors that they're filming scenes for Spider-Man 3 in Australia. And the same director that's directing Spider-Man 3 and both the other Spider-Man movies, John Watts.
Fantastic Four.
Exactly. So if he's writing his Fantastic Four script, the rumor is, we don't have a script yet, but the characters are in the process of being cast even before the script. So it's possible they know or they have a good idea of who's going to play these characters. And, if they change their mind and Jennifer Lawrence backs out, they can always just cut the shot from Thor Dark World, from Thor Love and Thunder, or from Spider-Man 3 before the movie even comes out,
It's interesting because some of this is being done out of order. Brie Larson filmed her stuff for Captain Marvel.
Yeah, after Endgame.
Yeah, well, yeah, she did Captain Marvel after Endgame. So she initially, for us, it appears in a different order, but for her, for that actress, she played Captain Marvel for the first time in Endgame, not in Captain Marvel. So that's why there's a slight tonal difference in those characters between those movies, but they have a very good in-universe explanation for the tonal difference as well. But that's the actual reason, is because they had not firmly cemented how Carol Danvers was going to behave in Captain Marvel until after they had done her stuff for Endgame. So it could be that we have another instance of that where we see a character pop up who hasn't really had their main thing yet. But I don't know. That's an interesting thing too. It would be cool to see Reed Richards pop up, but I think Blue Marvel is a better theory.
Oh yeah, same. Has a better connection to the Captain Marvel mythos, which seems to be what they want to build on, and the cosmic stuff.
Yeah, but the thing that Paul Bettany's been hinting at, I'm just trying to think of who it is that he could, because Paul Bettany is a classically trained I want to say he has a classically trained background. So actors that he would want to have always worked with.
It could be whoever's playing Mephisto or Nightmare, if they're who he's referring to.
And I'm trying to think of who that could be. Who is it that a theater actor would want to, I'm trying to think of who's left, because,
man, I wanted to say Christopher Lee, but I think he's dead.
Yeah. a lot of those actors that you would go to immediately as the people that they're either dead or they're out of this game now. They're done with it.
Oh my god. I know they won't do it, but how fucked up would it be if they use their fake face shit to use a dead actor? We have Vincent Price in the MCU playing Mephisto.
Okay, so here's another thing that I thought of. Because Olsen said that one of the reveals would be comparable to seeing Luke after all this time.
Yes, I have a theory about that too, but I want to hear yours first.
I'm not positive that that is Quicksilver. That doesn't quite reach the benchmark. And if it were any other actress saying it, I'd just be like, no, it's Quicksilver. But Olsen has a really good working knowledge of the character she plays. When she was,
she's actually read all the comics.
When she was cast, she read all of the stuff. She knows. She's very familiar with House of M, and there is a very, very iconic sequence between Scarlet Witch and another character in House of M that brings the whole thing crashing down. Or actually, I don't know if it was House of M. I think it was before House of M. But
since you mentioned that, the wine bottle in episode 1, if you translate it from French to English, it actually says House of M. Yeah.
But there's an exchange between her and another character where the other character says, they were never real. Your kids are gone. And she's losing her shit. Where are my kids? Mm-hmm. They were never real. They're not real. And that was Professor X. So how wild would it be for them to,
have Professor X show up here,
roll up Professor X, and he comes in and says, Wanda, your kids were never real. And it would basically be that same exchange from the comics, and it would meet that sort of benchmark for someone who's been gone for so long. you know,
But you know
it's
who
an
I
hour
think
reckoning, and then they come up. It would also meet the prerequisites that Paul Bettany has put down if that Professor X was being played by Patrick Stewart.
See, I think that the person Paul Bettany is referring to, and the person that Elizabeth Olsen is referring to,
Yeah.
I think they're two different people.
Yeah, initially
See,
I thought the same too. I thought they were very different people, but it's possible they could be the same person. And I immediately,
oh yeah, definitely possible.
I was like, oh, what person would it be that would meet both of those requirements? And I went to Patrick Stewart's Professor X.
Well, Wanda already has a sort of father figure in the MCU, and that's who I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be Steve Rogers, like not like actual old man Steve Rogers. And what I think is gonna happen is that she helped break he helped break Wanda out of prison. You know, when she was in Civil War,
out of the raft,
took her on the run and was assumedly with her all the way up until Infinity War, which I think there's like a year between Civil War and Infinity War. Don't quote me on that. But so that was her father figure, certainly more so than Stark was. Like, she always resented Stark. Like, even when you watch Age of Ultron or Civil War, you can see that resentment. Like, taking Cap's side wasn't even a secondary thought for her. So I'm thinking that what's going to happen is that there's going to be a small connection between WandaVision and Winter Soldier, and Falcon and Winter Soldier. And what I think is going to happen is that they're going to call Old Man Steve, and to save money so they don't have to like use the de-aging technology, which I would assume is, or re-aging technology, which is what I would assume is super fucking expensive. I think they're just going to show a picture on screen of Old Man Cap, and they're going to like have his voice, and he's going to be talking to them on screen. And then when you first see Captain America, he's going to be coming through the hex. And then like you'll see young man Steve when he comes through the hex, because Wanda has made him appear as the ideal version of him as he appears inside of her head. So when she thinks about, you know, Steve that's like my dad, she thinks young man Steve, not old man Steve. So even though he's old man Steve, he appears as young man Steve. And we saw rumors that Steve Rogers was going to be coming back as Captain America in a future movie. And then Chris Evans shot that shit down, but he only said he wasn't going to be Captain America. And Old Man Steve isn't Captain America. And, you know, we saw in Far From Home that Captain America was included in the list of dead from Endgame. And, you know, obviously we know that he didn't die, but the public doesn't know that he died. And saying that he did is a good way to write him off for the public. But I think they could actually kill him off in WandaVision. So he takes that Professor X role where he tries to talk down Wanda, and then Wanda tries to do what she did to Geraldine. But this is a fucking frail-ass old man. He might look young, but he's still that old man. So she goes and she tries to, like, essentially push him out and accidentally ends up killing him. And then the small connection to Falcon and Winter Soldier is that, essentially, we know that he picked Falcon to be the next Captain America. And for some reason, some other government agency is going to pick someone else to be Captain America. And that's why Falcon won't be Captain America at first. So what I'm thinking is that Falcon and Bucky know that Steve died, but they don't know how he died, and none of their like handlers or the people they work for are willing to tell them how Steve died. They just know it was weird, they know it was fucked up, and they know they sent Steve on a mission. And they know Steve, you know, even being the former Captain America, he's a 90-year-old man, and they're like, why the fuck did they send him on a mission? What the hell was he doing? And, you know, they don't know the specifics of it. They don't know about what happened in WandaVision yet. But, you know, I think they will find out about it eventually, but they'll just be frustrated that they don't know how Cap died in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Right.
But that's just my little theory about how they could maybe connect the two and have, like, one small branching thing. You know, it's possible that, you know, none of that's true, none of that's going to happen. But that's just, in an ideal world, what I would like to see happen.
Right. I don't know. It could go either way. As much as I would like my theory, I don't necessarily think it's true. Like, I am just kind of like spitballing and stuff like that. I
feel you.
But I think that bringing in a character like Professor X could work if they're basically kind of laying groundwork for mutants. Like he comes in, and after this whole thing goes down, it's like, hey, you know, let me tell you about the X-Men initiative, you know, like that's sort of, and he sits in the background for a while, like a Nick Fury kind of character. Obviously, you couldn't do that though with Patrick Stewart, unless you were like de-aging Patrick Stewart and then you like recast him with someone later, like depending on if what's his bucket, who's been playing him in recent years, wants to keep playing.
Yeah, you pretty much have to do McAvoy.
Yeah, I think McAvoy does a great job, and
honestly, even more so than McAvoy as Xavier, I love what's his name, Fassbender as Magneto. He is so badass in that role.
I think it would be a real shame to go and recast those characters when McAvoy and Fassbender. I think those incarnations of the characters still have a lot left in them, you know, like there's a lot left in the tank for that. And I think it would be really cool if you're doing some reality bending stuff and you're bringing in the Fox ones and you don't feel like overly compelled to explain every little nitpicky detail. Just no, we already have actors for these guys. We just brought them in. Screw it, you know, like I don't know what the status of the contracts for Fassbender and McAvoy were as of Dark Phoenix. I didn't see Dark Phoenix.
I didn't either.
I'd seen all the other ones, but to be honest with you, I don't need to be bitten by that snake again, because it's...
I want to see the Quicksilver saves everyone scene that people talk about, and outside of watching that one clip on YouTube, I have no interest in seeing it. I just want to see the Quicksilver clip, because he's the only good things about those movies.
It's like a 1-minute clip. You know, it's not even that long, so it's...
Exactly. So why am I going to waste an hour and 20 minutes to see it when I can just watch it for 2 minutes on YouTube?
Yeah, they, but I don't know what the status of the contracts was as of that time.
Or if they were nullified when they got merged into Disney or not. That could always be.
I don't know if it nullifies when a company buys the company that you're under contract with, or if you just now have a contract with that new company, or what. I don't know if their contracts were up or if they were contracted for more movies, but yeah, I think that would be an interesting thing worth looking into. But I don't see any reason to recast those guys, you know.
No, I don't either, really.
I think with better directors, I mean, even with mediocre directors and writing, they were doing a good job, you know. Like the X-Men movies, First Class was great. Days of Future Past I really liked.
I did too, and I didn't like it because it was like a good movie. I liked it because it was a good comic book movie. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The movies in general from First Class do get a little worse over time because the writing, the time on the writing isn't there. They're not spending enough time working things the way that Marvel does. But that's not
Apocalypse was hella rushed.
Yeah, it's not a concern we have to have if we're just having these actors come in and play new incarnations of the characters, especially if we're collapsing multiverses or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I think it would be really cool to see them come in and do that. But yeah, I didn't see Dark Phoenix. The same guy who wrote X-Men 3 wrote Dark Phoenix. Like, the guy has got...
They let him write fucking X-Men 3 again.
Yeah, like he's got...
And he wrote the same damn story again.
The same thing. He's got a hard-on for the Dark Phoenix, and it's like, you messed up.
You screwed the pooch not just once, but twice, my good sir.
With the same story. Like, no one...
The same damn story.
The thing is that the Phoenix is such a core element to the X-Men story, but because it's been screwed up twice now, no one's gonna want to see it. No one's going to want to see it for, like, you're going to have to let that plot element cool down for like a decade, unless you get someone with some Marvel magic who comes in and does some weird, you know, little, I don't know, like, there's no way that you're going to basically drop Dark Phoenix into the mix again and have people give a damn. Like, no one's going to care. And the reason...
Actually, you know how you do that? You do Dark Phoenix, but you don't have anything to do with Jean Grey. You have it have to do with Wanda Maximoff, and you call it WandaVision.
The only way that I think we could do anything with the Phoenix, and the thing is, I never liked Dark Phoenix stuff because of the fact that for Dark Phoenix to exist, you have to go through the story arc that just deals with the Phoenix. you know.
Mm-hmm.
And each time, you know, both incarnations of X-Men stuff for film, they've basically jumped over Phoenix Saga and gone right into Dark Phoenix Saga, and then didn't bother trying to explain or use anything that is the Phoenix. Like,
yeah, like the problem is these comics have like 3 or 4 years of build-up, and they're trying to cram 5 years worth of stories into 2 hours, and it just doesn't fucking work like that.
yeah, like
it worked in the comic. I mean, it worked in the cartoon, but it doesn't work in the movie.
yeah, Phoenix is a cosmic entity that gets corrupted by its time spent within Jean and influenced by the inner circle of the Hellfire Club and all that. Like, old X-Men stories I know pretty well. A lot of the new ones I don't like, but a lot of the old ones, you know, Phoenix Saga, Dark Phoenix Saga, Days of Future Past, you know, all that stuff, I know them pretty well from the comics.
Oh yeah, all the Claremont stuff.
And so, oh yeah, definitely. And so a lot of that, just, they don't construct it well for the movies, because they don't, everyone who is making comic book movies who isn't Marvel wants the payoff that Marvel gets without putting in the work that Marvel does.
Exactly.
You know, DC,
like we saw that
it,
in Batman versus Superman. Instead of like having a cameo where it makes sense and it's natural, Batman opens a fucking email, and inside the fucking email is the Justice League. You know, it's not like, you know, Iron Man, where you see Wakanda and you see Atlantis as a blip on a map and they don't mention it or refer to it. They take 5 minutes of screen time for Batman to read a fucking email, and then that's how they introduce the characters.
Yeah, it's strange.
It's messy.
Yeah,
it's messy.
It's strange and messy because Fox has done it, Sony has done it, DC has done it. You have essentially 3 separate entities making these superhero movies.
And Universal tried to do it with their Dark Universe movie and like flopped and failed. And they had Tom Cruise and The Mummy, 2 of the biggest horror franchises of the last 50 fucking years, and 2 of the best. Tom Cruise isn't a franchise, but you know, he may as well fucking be with the way he sells movies.
He's a horror franchise. We can.
Scientology certainly is.
Yeah. So he, I mean, yeah, but so we've got 4 film houses or entities that are putting out movies for shared universes or superheroes or whatever, and they don't seem to understand. Like, they're like, oh, Marvel's already set this precedent, we don't have to retread that. It's like, no, you do. That's why it works for Marvel, because of that slow burn. If you're not willing to you know, commit to that slow burn, just don't. You know, just don't bother doing it. And that's the thing with Phoenix is there's a lot of stories in X-Men that you can do that is not the Phoenix, that you can hint at the Phoenix as you go, regardless of which version of the Phoenix you go with.
Right, you could do the Shi'ar and Aliens, you could do Juggernaut's helmet, because that's magic, he's not even a mutant. You could use those plot threads to try and like introduce the Phoenix as this magic mystical force.
Yeah. And
you know, apparently in the first script of Dark Phoenix, the new movie, they actually were going to have the Skrull in it in place of the Shi'ar, and it was going to end with the Phoenix destroying a fleet of Skrull ships.
Wow.
And but they changed it because it was the exact same as the ending of Captain Marvel, and it was going to come out the same damn year.
Ouch.
So that means not just one MCU character has stolen the spotlight from Jean Grey and the Dark Phoenix. It's been 2 now.
Yeah, the thing about, so in 616, you know, you got Phoenix is this cosmic entity. Well, if you want to do that, you got to lead up to it. But if you go with the ultimate route, Phoenix is an aspect of Jean's personality that is manifest from her powers. It's a dark part of her consciousness that represents a chunk of her powers that was locked away by Xavier, you know, that is trying to get out and has been warped and changed by its imprisonment within her subconscious. And either one of those you need to lead up to it. In the meantime, you could have rolled with so many other X-Men stories instead of rushing Dark Phoenix each time. You know?
Like, we've never even gotten a real Weapon X movie outside of X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah, I mean, you could have. There's so many things that you could have done.
You got like Arcade, you know?
Yeah, you've got Arcade, you've got the Phalanx Covenant, you've got the Brood, you've got Second Genesis, the fucking island of Krakoa. You've got so many things that you could do. The Days of Future Past, you know, in its original form, we could actually, you know, do a decent Night of the Sentinels story. What is some of the other ones from way back in the day? I'm trying to think of like ones from like the 60s and stuff, but you've got so many different X-Men stories that are iconic.
Well, I mean, it's like you kind of mentioned in the way that Jean Grey, the Dark Phoenix, is a part of her subconscious. That just makes, I know I joked about it a minute ago, but Scarlet Witch, we haven't ever heard them say Scarlet Witch in the MCU. And with the way she came out of the Hex in episode 5, and she started speaking with the accent again, for a long time I've had the theory that she started talking with an American accent to try and blend in with the Avengers so she wouldn't seem as foreign. Because she grew up watching American soap operas and sitcoms on TV, and you know, that's sort of where the Hex from WandaVision comes in.
Yeah.
But in the same way that the Dark Phoenix is a manifestation of the dark side of Jean Grey, I think the Scarlet Witch is a manifestation of the dark side of Wanda, and I think that that's what we're sort of starting to see come out, you know. And it's kind of shitty because we've seen Dark Phoenix twice in the movies, and now we're doing something really fucking similar to it in the MCU, enough to the point that, you know, we probably won't see another Dark Phoenix for 10, 20, 30 years, but that could be a really fucking good thing, because that gives them time to actually build up to it when they decide to do it again.
It needs a massive cool down on it, I think. As far as her being the Scarlet Witch, I thought it was a pretty good thing that they called that out specifically when Hayward asks, like, does she have any other aliases, any silly nicknames? And
right, because like the merchandise and the marketing, you see Scarlet Witch on like the action figure box,
yeah,
but you don't like hear them ever say it in the movie.
Right.
Like they never even show it on screen as a code name.
Now, the thing I mentioned earlier about Agatha being a separate classification of sorcerer, I think it would be interesting if her association with Agatha, like Agatha's a witch, she might be referred to as the so-and-so witch, you know, the purple witch, or, you know, something goofy, the dark witch, the something. And then,
well, she comes from Wundagore Mountain, and Wundagore Mountain has a whole bunch of magic mythos built into it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes me think that that could have something to do with it. Like whenever superheroes give birth, typically they send them to Wundagore Mountain. So the Wizard and this other Golden Age World War II hero, were going to have twins, and basically they were told they were going to have twins, and then Quicksilver's wife, not Quicksilver, but the Wizard's wife died in child labor, and the two children died too. But it just so happened that at the same time, there was another mother who was a single mother, and she died during childbirth, but her kids lived. So they told the Wizard that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were the Wizard's children, and then the Wizard left them on Wundagore Mountain and said that he couldn't take care of them without his wife, and left them there in the hands of the witches to be raised. And so that was the original origin, was that originally it wasn't even Magneto, it was the Wizard. And then they retconned it so that the Wizard and I think it's Lady Liberty were never Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's parents, which is funny because Quicksilver has the same powers as the Wizard. Yeah. Which, you know, it makes sense that they would be related, even though they've retconned it now to the point that it was Magneto instead.
Yeah. I think it could be interesting if they say, oh, Wanda is the Scarlet Witch as a way of distinguishing her from other witches. It's not just a name. They're like, no, she's the Scarlet Witch. And maybe it's a special title. Maybe it's a special distinction. Maybe it's a way of saying, oh, she's a witch, but she doesn't do what other witches do. Like if all the witches are dedicated to, you know, serving extra planar masters and stuff, maybe the Scarlet Witch is a person who functions like functions similar to a sorcerer, but uses the methods of a witch. You know, it could be something like that. It would be really cool if her title as the Scarlet Witch has some sort of in-universe meaning that they give it. Something.
Well, in some mythologies, witches have to marry themselves to the devil. So, like the same way a nun is married to God, a witch is married to the devil.
Right.
So, if she gets like married to Mephisto somehow, or she makes some kind of a deal like, you know, Peter Parker and Mary Jane did, where she sells the love that Vision and Scarlet Witch have for each other in order to bring the Vision back to life, that could be a tragic fucking ending.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Yeah.
But if we get something like that, you know, it would kind of tie into that whole idea of, you know, the Scarlet Witch and her drawing her powers from Mephisto.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that same way, like you said, you know, the Purple Witch or maybe the Violet Witch could be a good way to describe Agatha.
Yeah.
And, you know, Agatha has been dead in the comics for a while now. Like, literally for, like, decades. And she still keeps coming back as, like, a ghost or an astral projection. So it's not like she's dead. She's still around. But she's only around when they really need her to be. And I'm thinking that in the comics, because, you know, they like to have their synergy, I'm thinking they're going to bring her back to life and make her a younger character. Because she's never really been a villain. She's always been, like, at most a rival. But if they bring her back to life and they make her as young as Wanda is, they can do a story in the comics where they're best friends and then they turn against each other for some reason.
Yeah. What's the name of the actress who plays Agatha in the show? Because she's done a fantastic
Catherine
job.
Hahn, I think.
Yeah.
Or Han. She is fucking amazing, man.
Oh,
she is like consistently my favorite fucking character.
Yeah, she's done a really excellent job.
Oh my god, and fucking it was Agatha all along. That was her singing that.
Is it?
That
really?
was her.
Oh my
yeah,
god,
that was
I
her
love
singing
that.
it.
I love that.
Right.
Her whole thing.
And fucking and I killed Sparky too.
It's like what a great way to tell the audience immediately, this is an evil person. She killed the dog. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, that's that's the bad guy right there. That's your bad guy. That's because everyone's, you know, it was a little tiny little dog, but the way she delivers that line is fantastic. I loved how she delivered that line. It was that whole sequence. I've watched it. I've had to go back and watch it multiple times just because it's so good. And they're showing her like doing things behind the scenes, and it's just like she's so,
oh my god, right?
So smug and confident about it. And it's like this actress, I know she's been in other things and people love her from other things. I haven't seen those other things really. And so this is my first.
I'd only seen her in Parks and Rec.
Yeah, see, I never got into that show. So
I don't blame you. Season 1 sucks.
For me, this is my first experience with her, and she's delightful. I love her. I just wanted to like put that out there because among all the theory,
I totally feel you. Same here.
Among all the theory crafting and everything like that, this show has just been so good. Like mechanically, it's well put together. The way everyone is portraying their characters. Paul Bettany is always an actor that I've liked, and I liked him as Vision from the start because I felt like he had a very cool delivery. And I don't mean like cool as in rad. I mean cool as in like the temperature. It was a very cool delivery of how everything was as Vision. So his moments of intensity where he's making a point or he's giving a call to action, they feel more dramatic, you know? But then to see him in a situation where he's so out of his depth, he doesn't know what's going on. He's the character Vision, not Paul Bettany, gives the actor a chance to show his range. And Paul Bettany has been like his interactions with Darcy, where he's he's like, our eyes met. We had a moment. like this is amazing. And then like while he's breaking the fourth wall, he's like, this is Wanda trying to keep me from getting home. And then like, you know, you have the road crew that pulls up and blocks their way, and he just looks at the camera. You know,
oh my god, right?
Really.
And then you got that moment where he's like talking to the camera. Oh yeah, I love that moment. After that, you got that moment where he's sitting down in front of the truck, like actually talking to the camera, like playing along with it.
Yeah.
And then like at the end he realizes, wait, Wanda's just doing this. What the fuck am I doing? This isn't normal. And then he just flies off. He's like, oh, I can turn intangible and I can fly, and I've been able to do this the entire time, and I've been riding around in a fucking ice cream truck for some reason, just to get exposition, I guess.
Yeah, her influence over him is still strong, though not complete. So while he's struggling to get answers and do all this other stuff, there's still parts
of the same time the items around the house are glitchy now.
Yeah,
going back to what I said about bandwidth.
Yeah, there's parts of him that are still playing by her rules, and then his logic catches up with it, and he's like, wait, why am I don't have to play by these rules. Screw this. I'm just gonna go and leave Darcy in the truck by herself, because chances are Darcy's actually gonna get there faster now that she's not sitting there with Vision, because Wanda doesn't have any interest in keeping random person from outside the hex from getting to her house. Who she doesn't even know. It doesn't even register for her.
Something that no one's really brought up? So in episode 4, Randall Park mentions that the reason he was drawn to Westview in the first place was that there was a missing persons case, right? And we still don't know who that missing person was, because he said he was telling Monica that it was a missing persons case, and that's why he went out there. And but yeah, and then when they go back in to get Monica again, they say that it started as a missing persons case. It still is. So obviously in that moment they're referring to Monica, but they still haven't made clear who they were referring to the first time they said that. I don't know if that's going to be something in particular, or if it's just someone from inside the town that's missing elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that was just kind of like a throwaway thing to get the story started, because to me that initial kind of introduction that they do, where it's like, oh, I came here because of this, it feels kind of like the exposition you do for a Dungeons and Dragons character before everyone meets up at the tavern. Right. But at the same time, it could be something, because this show is just what the hell is this show? And it could actually be something. It could be a character we haven't seen yet. It could be a character who we've met, but it could be someone who's just been sitting there in the town, just chilling. And it could be whoever it is Pietro is supposed to be. I don't even know. A
lot of people are saying that Dottie could be a witch. And the reason for that is that when you saw the board, you saw Agatha and you saw Dottie on the board. And everyone else, they knew who they were in real life. They knew who the real missing person was, but they didn't have one there for Dottie or Agatha.
Interesting. I had not realized that. I know Dottie has a husband in the thing, but it could just be that, she was cast with that person. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually married, but...
Right, and it could just be a red herring.
Yeah, I think what it's all going to boil down to is some crazy witchy whiz-biz, some crazy ongoing ritual. The whole thing, I think, is an ongoing ritual.
Well, they mentioned in the Nexus commercial, I think that's a reference to the Nexus of all realities, which is a Man-Thing thing. And they actually mention Man-Thing and the Nexus of realities in Thor Dark World when Selvig is drawing shit in a crazy frantic manner on the board. He mentions the Nexus of all realities. And then in a couple months later in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Maria Hill was talking to Pepper Potts on the phone, and she says, and Man-Thing? What the hell is a Man-Thing? I've got a Man-Thing and a Hell Cow here. And obviously referencing Man-Thing and Hell Cow, and Man-Thing is directly connected to the Nexus of all realities.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me think that, if they pulled in, if Pietro is from an alternate universe, and, he's not just an actor like the rest of them, and they really did pull the guy from the Fox universe or something else maybe, or some other universe, they could have done it that way. That could be the explanation for that, the Nexus of all realities.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that Quicksilver is Quicksilver from another reality, and he's still being controlled by Agatha. She could just be hitting him with the mind whammy and having him go through, the steps of, oh, we need you to kind of keep Wanda on track here. She's kind of going off the rails a little bit. He could still be Quicksilver. He could still be, it would be interesting to see him and Monica have a little slugfest, but entirely possible Monica is under their influence too. because we haven't really gotten the big superhero fight, and I'm expecting big superhero fight by the end of the series.
And you know, we see the scene in the trailer of Wanda and Vision, and they're both flying at the tanks that are coming inside Westview.
Yeah, we have what, 2 episodes left?
Well, we have 2 episodes left, but there's a rumor that we're gonna get a secret 10th episode. And I'm thinking that if they do a secret 10th episode, they'll set it up in a way that it's an epilogue, not so much as a finale. And the epilogue could like be like a Doctor Strange 30-minute prequel to the movie, you know? It could be something like that. It might not necessarily be a WandaVision episode that's the 10th episode, but the reason this rumor exists is that there's a bunch of actors that on their IMDb's and in some of their personal portfolios, and including one that had leaked some storyboards that had spoilers for episode 9, they have referenced a 10th episode of WandaVision multiple times across their thing. So some people are thinking there could be a secret 10th episode, especially because there's a week gap between the last episode of WandaVision and the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh, I thought I didn't think there was a gap there. I thought they just picked right up.
Nope, there's a 1 week gap.
I do remember that interview with Kevin Feige where he was talking about that WandaVision was going to be 6 hours total. And if you take 9 episodes, chop them roughly in half for, you know, the half-hour runtime, which is way too short for these, I think. Half hour is not enough. You chop those in half, that's only 4.5 hours, you know? That's now, it could be that Kevin...
Well, there was the rumor that the last 2 episodes, or the last 3, are going to be an hour long apiece. But, you know, the last episode was 45 minutes.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, there were, I think episode 4 was 40 minutes, and I think episode 5 was 40 minutes. But they haven't all been exactly 30 minutes. I think the first one is like 28 minutes, and the second one is exactly 30 minutes.
It would be kind of difficult in the next 2 episodes, unless you made them super long, to meet that 6-hour cap. Now, take it for what you will, because honestly, I don't think that you can really put a hard... like hold Kevin Feige to that number, because he could have just been ballparking, being like, oh, it's gonna be about 6 hours.
That's what I'm thinking.
Plans change, you know. It could just be a thing where it's like, oh yeah, you know, we thought it was gonna be 6 hours. In the edit, we cut it down to, you know, this much. We took out a lot, we trimmed a lot of the fat, you know, things like that. That could be a thing, you know. I don't know for certain. I just saw that floating around that some people thought that, you know, oh, because he said 6 hours, it has to be 6 hours. But I don't think that's necessarily true. Kevin Feige has never been someone who is like gives a hard number and then that's the number, you know. He's
and the fact that, like, you know, they have to do the whatchamacallits. Shit, I forgot where I was going with that. My bad.
Do you mean like the after credit or mid credit things, or?
Oh yeah, so the fact that they don't exactly have to sync up with commercial breaks like a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does means that they can have different runtimes for every episode. Like if you go to Daredevil on Netflix, some episodes are 48 minutes, some episodes are 52 minutes, some episodes are like an hour and 16 minutes. You know, like, and WandaVision seems to be following that trend of, because these don't have to be on TV in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a difference if it's 22 minutes with 8 minutes for commercials, or if it's 45 minutes with 15 minutes for commercials. You know.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that. They can break those rules that shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. can't.
Yeah. I've always, and I don't feel like half an hour is long enough, but when I think about it, when you're sitting down and watching something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's probably the same amount of actual content between the two, but because you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on TV with commercial breaks, it feels like longer. I was actually talking to my wife about this earlier. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for us was almost completely ruined by it being on TV.
Right?
Because and I got into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I watched all the way, you know, through to...
I watched through like season 4. The last episode I saw, they came back from the future, and now they're gonna go to space or something. I don't know. I got bored.
That season's actually pretty solid. If you stick it out for a couple more episodes, that season picks up pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
So, and that's, unfortunately, that's kind of how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is. The first couple episodes
it really is.
of every season are kind of like slow. And
The whole first season sucks, and then you hit the Winter Soldier crossover,
yeah,
and it goes from 0 to 360. And then like the Ghost Rider season with the Darkhold, like the Ghost Rider episodes are great, and then it sucks again, and then you get into the virtual reality where it's the alternate timeline.
and it's interesting again, and
exactly, it's good again, and then they beat Ada, and it's shit again.
Yeah, a lot of that is it being tied to television. And so the first season was garbage because they were beholden to holding a certain schedule that lined up with movie releases. When they eventually got out from under that at Winter Soldier, the writing of the show went up drastically. But
and season 2 was pretty good.
A lot of the stuff that they do with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. loses its impact when you have a commercial break every few minutes.
Right, and you know, this is a little bit off topic, but can you believe they fucking introduced Lucy Lawless as a fucking agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and killed her off in the same fucking episode?
What garbage people. Like,
right?
Why would you
fucking right?
Why would you bring in Lucy Lawless to kill off immediately?
Exactly. Like you could have kept her around as like a side character to have her show up like once or twice a season, like Maria Hill does. And she is such a big fucking draw for nerds, you know?
How many other random ass S.H.I.E.L.D. agents have you guys kept around for no reason? Anyway, so first season kind of sucks. Not only does it suck because it's beholden to movie schedule, but because it got broken up by commercial breaks. When I switched over to watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on Hulu or on like my Comcast like on demand thing, you still get a commercial or two, but it's not every few minutes. And suddenly the quality of that the storytelling goes up, even though nothing's really changed, you know. But because everything is on television, and because a lot of shows, you've seen it with The Flash, you've seen it with Arrow, a lot of shows have developed the habit of the mid-season finale. That didn't used to be a thing. So every season of a show effectively becomes two seasons, like 2 mini seasons. You have one plot that binds them the two together, but then each half has its own subplot. And it's not, some shows do it better than others, but a lot of it sucks. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like fully embraced that, like for good or for ill, in that the overall story of the Darkhold becomes a Ghost Rider story, and it becomes a virtual reality story. But it's
right, like they had enough budget to do half a season of Ghost Rider, but not a full season. So they were like, well, fuck it. What do we do for the rest of it? We have these assets from Winter Soldier we can reuse and slap a fucking Hydra logo on it. Yeah, let's do that then.
It's just it's kind of sucks because they're bound to that TV formula. They have that off season, that what they consider like that slump around the holidays where people aren't watching TV as much, I guess, because of holiday stuff. And they're just like, okay, well, everything's on break, so now,
also so they can put specials on.
Yeah, so we're going to end this season sort of on a thing here, and then we'll pick it back up. But every time you do that with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they still have to do the first couple episode like lead in. Even The Flash does it, where they're like, oh, we have to explain to you what you missed or what happened 2 months ago. We have to explain it to you because we got to hold your friggin' hand through this. And I think that because of all that time that's eaten up on recaps and crap like that, I think that has sort of created the filler that makes me feel like a show like WandaVision is short. Because WandaVision is not giving you that. It is not.
Yeah, there's no filler.
There's not filler. It's very lean. It's getting to the point. Each episode immediately starts moving forward in what it's trying to do, even while
it goes out of its way to make you ask questions instead of answer them.
Yeah, even while it's doing its gimmick of jumping forward a decade, that's part of the show. That's part of the meta of the show. So it's not. It feels short. But it only feels short because we've sort of become accustomed to that fat, to that filler and the bloat that comes from like legacy television, from having to get recaps every half season on what happened in the last half of the season. We have to have a bunch of characters stand around week to week and tell us what happened last week, and you know, all this other stuff. And it's like, without that and just serving up the story and the actual content, you're getting a better experience. But it does feel kind of short. You know, you're kind of like on a diet where a lot of the carbs are being cut out, and you're initially going to miss them. But I'm wondering if over time we're gonna wonder, like, why is this shit on TV so long? You know, like, why are they belaboring this? You know.
Well, you know, not just that, but WandaVision has a very definitive set goal of finishing all this shit in 9 to 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. every fucking season. Flash every fucking season. They have to have 22 episodes to hit like syndication numbers.
Yep.
And you know, when you look at some of the seasons, like I think Black Lightning had a 13 episode season. Batwoman had the first season had 13 episodes. The last season of Arrow had 13 episodes. When these shows have shorter seasons,
they're better.
The fan reception tends to be better.
Yep.
You know, I haven't watched those shows, but just based off what I've noticed from other people that do.
I gave Black Lightning a shot only because it was just spontaneously. Like, I watched the stuff on the CW app, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. You know, it's another show. It's not in the Arrowverse. Like, they had said at the time, it's not in the Arrowverse. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. It's here. You know, and so I watched it, and it was shorter, but the stories, the characters, everything in Black Lightning, next to the other shows that were running at the time, Black Lightning was like better, you know, because I used to do this thing with a friend of mine, where each.
Hey, can you give me 1 second? I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Fuck, I didn't know my mic wasn't back on yet. Is it working out? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
But you were saying that you were watching Black Lightning and you and your friend had a thing?
Yeah, so my friend and I had this thing that we were doing for a while, where when we were watching the shows on, you know, these things on TV, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Flash, you know, we had like the regimen that we were kind of going through. And each week, at the end of the week, after everything was said and done, we would basically, we wouldn't talk about the shows until the end of the week. And then at the end of the week, we do like a wrap up where we're just standing in my kitchen and we talk about like, all right, who do you have as the top one for the week? And he'd be like, oh, The Flash, or, you know, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then we would have like, all right, who absolutely was just balls this week, you know? And we would talk about like which episode was like, which show had the worst offering for that week.
It was usually Arrow, wasn't it?
Arrow for a little while was towards the bottom. Actually,
I stopped watching that show after they killed off Laurel.
Yeah.
I think a bunch of people stopped watching them because they did this whole arc to bring back Sarah and immediately killed off Laurel like 2 episodes later.
Yeah.
And like I think a lot of people, like, you know, they say jump the shark. Yeah. I've heard a lot of people call that the moment that Arrow killed the canary.
Ooh. Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I know, right? I love that.
It was tough. A lot of the Arrow show suffers when it bends over backwards to cater to Oliver and Felicity's romance.
God, right? Felicity is the fucking worst. Like, she is so great in season 1 and season 2.
Yep.
And she's like, oh, she's this cute nerd girl. And, you know, I either want her to be my best friend or I want her to be my waifu. And then she turns into the most annoying... I don't want to say it. She just gets so fucking annoying in the later seasons. And, like...
She's kind of lame. And shit.
People say the same thing about Iris in Flash, but I disagree. I like Iris in Flash. I think that
Iris, I feel like,
great.
still has agency, and so she's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
she doesn't have like elite hacker powers where anytime they need like to make Felicity the hero, she does it through some kind of vague computer shit.
Iris,
I like the Felicity flashback episode where you see like goth Felicity where she looks like death, which was like totally intentional, and I fucking love that.
Iris and Barry are kind of walking the line right now, but I think they're still okay. Because they got their dynamic set up early enough where I think it's kind of part of the fabric of the show.
Oh yeah, but like with Arrow, you can see that in season 1, they wanted it to be Oliver and Felicity, and they had, not Oliver and Felicity, they wanted it to be Oliver and Laurel. You can see that in episode 1, because in the very first episode, the pilot, the big reveal at the end is that Dinah's name is Laurel, which is like, a reference to Black Canary in the comics, which was supposed to be the big cue that, hey, this is going to be who this becomes.
Yeah.
And then, like, instead, Laurel and Oliver had no fucking chemistry whatsoever. They tried to make that work.
Yeah.
Then they tried to make Oliver and Sarah work. And then Felicity, like Emily Bett Rickards, is a great actress. And she is so fucking charismatic that, like Stephen Amell, like he's cool. I like his social media presence. He does a good job as this version of Oliver. And I say this version because it is not fucking the Green Arrow.
Yeah.
But, like...
he's a chill guy, too.
Right. He plays like a John Wayne character, and he plays that same John Wayne character in everything he's ever in, and he doesn't know how to play anything but stoic. So you really need someone who's like uber charismatic, like Emily Bett Rickards, to like play off of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Even when he's on screen with Grant Gustin, Grant Gustin pulls something else out of him that is... it's interesting to see. Like, he's one of those actors where you get sort of a different result depending on who you put him next to. And that's kind of interesting. But so the thing that we were doing from week to week was pretty interesting. I really liked doing that. Black Lightning was consistently towards the top for me, if not the top for several weeks running. Legends of Tomorrow was consistently at the bottom. Because Legends of Tomorrow would basically... it would, at the very beginning, it would write checks that it couldn't cash for the rest of the season. It would give you promises, and then the payoff was always disappointing. There's very few instances where I felt like anything offered in Legends of Tomorrow was worth my time. I really like everything with Constantine, but it's so hard to get into Legends of Tomorrow because of how they run it.
With Legends, I don't watch whole seasons, but I will watch like individual episodes of it.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing the big pitch for one season was that it was the Legion of Doom, and that it was Damien Dark and Reverse Flash and a couple of other characters, and I forget who they are, but they were all teaming up to be like this Legion of Doom and to alter history. I think it was Vandal Savage they were teaming up with.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they were trying to alter history or do whatever, and I watched one episode from that season. And the reason I watched it was because it had the Black Flash, I think, in it, or Zoom.
Yeah.
And like I knew there was a little bit of Flash crossover, but I can't remember even finishing that episode. And I heard that Kid Flash was in one of the seasons too, and I haven't even started it.
Yeah.
And I loved Constantine. Constantine was fucking amazing. And I'm sure I'd like some of the episodes he's in, but it's like, this isn't a show that I'm ever going to watch every episode of. It's a show that I'm going to watch specific episodes of because I know there are good episodes, but there's no good seasons.
They had Wally in there for a little while, but Wally he was one of the legends, but he kind of operates on a different level from the rest of the legends. So his power level is just kind of like they weren't sure what to do with him. Like that whole season was them not really sure what they were gonna do. And it clearly showed that at some point they're like, all right, we got to get Wally back out of here because there's too many situations that he can just solve with super speed, that would be entire episode things for the other legends to figure out, and he can just do it, so yeah. But I mean, the reason why I kind of went off into this thing is that that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. almost never topped out, but it almost never bottomed out. It was always kind of middle of the pack for us. Some of the Ghost Rider episodes where we would pick as like our, impressive showings. If you had something like that, if I had something like that now with WandaVision, WandaVision would be hands down the best one every week. There's nothing else that was on even at that time. Right now, obviously, there ain't shit on because pandemic. But if you were to put WandaVision in that era when everything was running smoothly and everything, it would still be WandaVision at the top. Right. You know, because of that trimmed fat, that trimmed, you know, that more curated experience. You know? Yeah. That's where I'm at on WandaVision. I think it's just kind of like superior, and I really, really hope that Falcon and Winter Soldier can keep that going. I don't
just
want
based off the trailer, it looks like it will.
Yeah.
But like it seems like it's really like a Mission Impossible-esque, like balls to the walls action type show. Which is interesting because that's kind of the opposite of what we've seen from WandaVision.
Yeah.
Like with WandaVision, it's shot very pretty. The CGI is great. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful show that looks like a movie. But are they going to be able to keep that up with like stunts and action sequences, you know? Like, are we going to have action sequences that look like Daredevil hallway fights, which are impressive in their own right, but it's not like a movie fight? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's you would have, there's a difference between like TV fight, Netflix fight, and then cinema fight, you know?
Right. Like Daredevil had fights that looked like kung fu movies, and they were always shot with like one camera or like with few angles, right? And then you have that same exact concept as the Daredevil hallway fight happening in Captain America Civil War, when Captain America and Bucky are fighting their way down those stairs. And that was a very different fight comparatively to the fight that we saw in Daredevil.
Right. And, well,
even though it's the same kind of setting.
It comes down to the kind of genre that you're going for. Like you said, it's very much like a kung fu fight with Daredevil, and that's because a lot of the Eastern kung fu films, you know, wherever they're coming out of, they tend to shoot them without the interruptions. It was, I don't know why, but when I was younger, I read Jackie Chan's biography. Mm-hmm. And in it, he describes how a continuous shot of a hit makes it look stronger. It looks more interesting. Visually, it's more compelling. A lot of Western film will wind up and then it'll cut to a different angle to show someone like stumbling back or whatever, and you lose something in that shot. You lose a little bit of that. Now, it creates a better action film when you have those cuts, but it's a fighting film when you don't have those cuts. They're more interesting to have a rapid sequence, like, bah, 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 and the next guy, bah, 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 and you're just moving like rapidly between these things, and you have it at a certain intensity with those fights that is maintained, that sometimes gets lost with too many cuts. Now, in between there, I don't know if there's a space that you can occupy in between, but where does WandaVision go if it's gonna have a fight? Because so far it's created its whole other character and flavor for everything.
Assumedly, if they wanted to just get lazy with it, they could just have Monica. You could have Monica and Wanda and Agatha just throw colors at each other and have it be a color fight.
You could have a big Dragon Ball Z beam struggle. You could do that, but it would be interesting to see what they do for a fight, because I mean, I'm inclined to think that they're just going to default back to whatever the MCU is already doing, which is usually an action film. But I don't know, like it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Like, they're definitely not going to have, I think, like continuous shots, but it would be really interesting. I would love to see something that is a continuous shot, continuous sequence, what long sequences that they use like with kung fu films, but do it with slinging magic, you know, where you have the camera is set on Wanda. She's fighting either Agatha or Monica or both. If Monica is being controlled by Agatha, I don't know. She's fighting both, but the camera follows Wanda. She moves from one house to another. She's crossing the lawn. She flings a spell. She gets down behind something. She has to think for a minute. She comes out, but it's all one shot of her just moving and having to deflect things. Like, there's some shit that she saw during that final fight with Thanos. She saw wizards all over the place. So surely she's got some tricks that she's adapted to her own power set, you know? Like,
and, you know, she was nearly taking down... she was at a point of nearly taking down Thanos, too.
Yeah.
Before Thanos ordered, like, basically him to kill his entire army of soldiers.
Yeah.
In order just to get Wanda off of him.
Yeah,
like, Wanda nearly took him down.
Yeah, dude.
And so did Captain Marvel.
Dude initiates the Blitz just to get her off his ass. Which is, you know, interesting. Between her and Captain Marvel, they could have done it. Captain Marvel was... some people... Now, this is getting way off topic, and you'll probably just want to, like, cut this out. But it's one thing that I've had a problem with. A lot of people don't understand why Captain Marvel was able to just kind of come in and Superman Thanos' ship and headbutt him and take all the hits that she does, is because when she comes, the way her powers work is she absorbs energy and rechannels it. She has her own powers, her own base level of energy that she uses, but she can also absorb and rechannel energy. Coming down through the atmosphere generates its own thermal energy that she can use. When she's coming down,
come in like a meteor and crash through that shit.
Right. She basically builds up her strength as she's coming through the atmosphere, but then the ship fires on her with energy cannons. She builds up all of that energy as she comes down. By the time she hits that ship, she is turbocharged. She is like in full Super Saiyan glowy mode by the time she gets down to Thanos, you know? If he had not used a power stone on her, because this, as we know, the stones cannot defend against, like, the stones, you know what I mean? Like, they can kind of balance each other out, but you can't, as Selvig said, the stone cannot defend against itself and the powers cannot defend against themselves. And her power is drawn from the Tesseract and the Space Stone. The only thing Thanos had that he could touch her with was the Power Stone. Like, he had to use the Power Stone just to get her, like, off of him. That's all he had going for him. Outside of that, but a lot of people are like, oh, you know, the Brie Larson hate is so strong for whatever, you know, for whatever reason that, you know, people willingly forget that how her powers work, you know,
willingly.
But that's also, I do think that, you know, the Captain Marvel movie also has some blame there, because they don't really explain her powers. Just that, oh, she got hit with this thing and now she blows stuff up, you know?
The fact that Captain Marvel, the movie, takes place out of Order 2 just makes it that much more confusing.
Yeah.
The way that they don't explain her powers. Because, like, she already has them when she first appears, and then they kind of have to, like, work backwards to explain her full story in a really fucking confusing way, might I add.
Yeah, and they don't, like, go out of their way to tell you how these powers work or what they do. It's a photon blast. What is that? I don't know. Like, it's and I hope that they explain it a little bit more, either with Monica or in Captain Marvel 2, because I know how her powers work, so those sequences make sense to me. But, like, my wife, for instance, did not know how Captain Marvel's powers worked. So she would be like, why can Captain Marvel do that? Like, she couldn't do that in the last scene. Why can she do it now? And I'm like, oh, because she absorbs energy. And she's like, oh, she does. Why didn't they say that? I don't know. Like, with me there to explain it, it works for her. But if I wasn't there to explain it, would that movie suck for her? Like, would it
you know, keep in mind, people like the Quartering don't even fucking read comics in the first place, so they wouldn't know. Yeah,
it's just like, is her ass nice or not? Like, who cares, dude? She's slinging Super Saiyan energy around. Her butt doesn't actually factor into it for me at all. But I mean, that's a whole other, we could talk for hours just about his nonsense and his,
and believe me, I plan on it eventually.
His shenanigans. I've talked about it, and I'm only going to touch on it here, whether you want to use it or not, whatever. I've told my wife this, because she really has a passion for the MCU, but she didn't read a lot of comics. She wants to really talk about this with people, and she tweets about it sometimes. And when she does, she always has people in her mentions and stuff like correcting her on things. And I told her, I was like, yeah, you really want to brush up on your comic knowledge, but be aware that no matter how good your knowledge is, you're always going to have someone checking you, because they're going to assume that you're not a quote real fan, because there's this culture with these people where they don't really understand where these things come from, where certain trends come from. They had someone like this idiot tell them where it came from, and they're just like, yep, that's where it came from. That's
like the problem with comics and the comic book discourse, like going off of what you said about misconceptions, there was this big argument in comics for a long time. Who was the original idea? Crypto or Ace the Bat Hound? Who ripped off who? And here's the thing. One of them was written before the other, and the other was published before the other. But here's the thing. They're both ripping off Lassie. The popular thing of the era was you had dogs that rescued kids, and they were both decided to rip off Lassie at the same damn time.
Yeah.
Neither of them ripped off each other. They ripped off something else.
That was the thing. Like, if you pay attention to anything that Stan Lee said around that time, Stan Lee's biggest gripe with comics at the time was the compulsion to include children either by sidekicks or pets. He hated it. He didn't give Spider-Man
the entire reason for Spider-Man.
Yeah, he didn't give Spider-Man a sidekick because Spider-Man was the youth. He was that person. Why have an adult hero and then a kid sidekick? He hated that. So, but yeah, the thing I was telling my wife was that a lot of people, like, one of the examples of people sort of taking someone's word for it and assuming it's true is everyone assumes that inclusion was the thing that ruined the comics industry. You know,
right? And you look at like that era of comics, and I'll be honest with you, all new, all different Marvel, a lot of that shit sucks. A lot of it sucks ass.
A lot of that stuff is bad.
Like Jonathan Hickman's like Avengers were coming out at the same time, and that's one of the best Avengers runs of like the last 20 years.
A lot of the stuff that is a little ham-fisted, like I don't like Kamala Khan. I know that I recognize though that I am not the audience for that, and that's fine. So I
personally, I'm a big fan, and I get like Ultimate Spider-Man, like the next generation of like what Spider-Man was supposed to be, and then what Ultimate Spider-Man was supposed to be. I get those vibes from Kamala, and you know, like you said, you know, I get that I'm not the audience for it, but I still really enjoy those books.
Originally, I felt the same way about Miles. Miles Morales was very ham-fisted to me. I didn't like his backstory. They've done a great job with him since. I think he's a great character. But
Ultimate Peter was my Peter, and it hurt too much when they killed him off, so I was very resentful of Miles.
Me too.
Up until basically Spider-Verse. And then after Spider-Verse, I was sold on the character, because he was like his own character.
Yeah.
And then by the time Insomniac's Miles Morales game rolls around, like, he's great. I love him so much at that. And like, he's a great fucking character now, and I love seeing him show up. Like, I think his issues when he shows up in Venom, or not Venom, but in Absolute Carnage, are better than the parts where Peter Parker shows up in Absolute Carnage.
So the thing I've been telling her is, you know, you get these people who assume, this is the big example of this, that representation and forced inclusion and all this other stuff is what ruined comics today. And I'm like, no, that's not what ruined comics. Like, yeah, you can look at that, and, you know, if someone tells you on their YouTube channel that that's what ruins comics and you can believe it, whatever, it shows a lack of awareness of the industry and how comics have evolved. It shows a lack of understanding to simply put it on that, because it's not that.
Right.
It has to do with the fact that for the better part of a decade, if not over a decade now that I'm thinking about it, DC and Marvel were competing on the platform of crossover events, one after the other. Very few of the individual books were able to tell their own stories and have them go anywhere without running into the brick wall of the next big crossover event. And
exactly.
So every crossover event was always steamrolling every individual story that was being told, because they needed to sell these books, and they were doing it off of these crossover events to make them like grand spectacles like the movies. But it doesn't work for that format, you know?
I like that what they've done nowadays, instead of like having Superior Spider-Man 23 be a story that's exclusive to Superior Spider-Man. Then 24 is a tie-in to Age of Ultron, and then 25 is back to Superior Spider-Man. What they do now, like for Immortal Hulk 23 and 24, you're told at the start of 24 that Immortal Hulk Absolute Carnage takes place between 24 and 25, but you don't have to read it. It's done as like a spin-off comic, and they get a separate artist from the main artist to do it, and they get the same writer to do it. So you have Immortal Hulk Absolute Carnage #1, maybe #2 if there's enough story to warrant it. But it doesn't interfere with the Immortal Hulk story, and it does cross over the two stories in a way that they could build on later if they wanted to. But it's really interesting to me the way they've like changed it in such a small way, but it's made such a big impact in like helping out the way the comics flow.
It's more conducive to telling those individual stories, but tying them together if you want. I remember during Civil War, you couldn't get the whole story if you didn't buy every comic that month. You know, you just couldn't do it. You could do Spider-Man Civil War, but then like from one month to the next, so much would have happened. You're like, wait, what happened here? When did Iron Man do that? And you find out, oh, this happened in Invincible Iron Man. This happened in Fantastic Four. This happened in Avengers.
Civil War is the most confusing fucking book to try and
now they eventually...
It's not even just that, but like it's switching perspectives all the time if you try to read it in order. Like the Spider-Man book is from Spider-Man's perspective, Iron Man is from Iron Man's, and then Captain America
say is
the Avenger books are like all over the place in perspective.
They bound them all together in like one graphic novel, and when you read them together you're like, how do you even make sense of this? It bounces around all over the place.
And Spider-Man's referencing what happened in Spider-Man before that, and what's happening in that individual arc. And you know, these collections don't even collect everything that would be essential to every single story. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably not gonna include this part, but I would fucking torrent the books, and the torrents had great comprehensive reading lists that were like, okay, this isn't necessarily a tie-in, but it does lead up to Civil War, so you're gonna read these 3 issues of Spider-Man beforehand. That way you know what's happening in the Civil War tie-in issue. And like, it was comprehensive like that, which I mean, of course, because you know, you're pirating it, you're getting them for free, but still.
Yeah, I think that massive big crossover events like that to sell comics that like, oh, we see you're a Spider-Man fan, but we need to sell Iron Man comics, so we're gonna have a big crossover event that ties in with those things. I think that did more damage to the comics industry than Kamala Khan. You know, I think it did more.
I completely fucking agree.
Like, I think that did way more damage than any sort of inclusion or representation or anything like that. Because,
and you know, there was even a point where Marvel had an offer that if you had a Blackest Night cover and you were a comic shop and you cut off the covers to return, and instead of returning them to DC, you sent them to Marvel, they would send you variant covers for a Marvel event. Or maybe it was the other way around. I forget which way around it was.
Wow.
But that's how neck and neck these guys were in like their competing events at the time. Which were basically just pissing contests with them pissing all over the fucking universes they were reading.
Yeah. Dude, all right, so we're at 2.5 hours now.
Yeah.
You've got
we should probably wrap things up.
Do we have any final thoughts on WandaVision that we haven't touched on yet? That I think I've basically covered everything I've been thinking.
Couple things worth mentioning. This is a weird one. We don't have to get into it, but Vision didn't have super speed. Vision didn't have super speed in any of the Avengers movies. He has super speed in episodes 1 and 2, and he has super speed when the babies are being delivered. But after Quicksilver shows up, he doesn't have super speed anymore. And he's wearing an outfit in the 70s episode that looks visually similar to Quicksilver's, which is a blue and white outfit. And in the Ultimate Universe, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are canon fucking.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
Probably not a reference to that, but it might be, and that's why I thought it was worth note. And the last thing I was going to mention was what we were talking about before we started recording with the whole Satanic Panic thing.
Yeah.
The missing kid logo on the milk jug. And he looks like the kid from that old school X-Men comic where it says, do you know if your kid's a mutant or not? And I'll put that on screen just for reference. But you were mentioning that could be a reference to Satanic Panic stuff from the 80s. And that basically, you know, that could be an allusion to Mephisto maybe.
Yeah.
And, you know, I said maybe it could be an allusion to that kid from that X-Men thing that you would see. Or it could also, I also thought it kind of looked like Billy. which could imply that, the kids are mind washed too, and they're actually someone else's kids, which is twice as fucked up in the context of it. But
I
just wanted to throw that out there.
I had originally thought that it was just a reference to like the era of it going through the 80s because the milk was bouncing around in era. But then I was like, oh, Satanic Panic. Oh, maybe that's another Mephisto reference. But it's also possible that these missing kids could be a story.
The missing kids from Rescue.
Yeah, it could be a story seed for other various things that are going on in the MCU right now. Like kids could be, I don't know, there could be something else that's going on there that's going to be explored later. But I kind of like, there's a lot of good evidence for Mephisto, I think. But again, could just be references. It might not mean anything.
Could be red herrings.
Yeah, could be completely red herrings for something that comes completely out of left field. There's a lot of stuff that I think that they could slap us with out of left field. I think to a lot of people not reading the comics, Agatha Harkness comes out of left field. And I hope that that her reveal is just as good for them as it is for us.
I hope so too.
Because I can't go to that. Like, even I do have the sort of pleasure of having watched these with my wife, who, like I said, is not super into the comics. She doesn't read a lot of the comics and stuff. She wasn't into Marvel stuff. Like, if I put a comic in front of her, she'll check it out. But she didn't read a lot of comic books growing up. At least not, Marvel or she was more of she read some DC, she had manga, but nothing Marvel. So for her, all of this stuff is new. But
I think that's the case for a lot of people too out there. Like, I've been watching Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman, and he's been talking about how his wife has never been into Marvel, never been into superheroes, not into any of that stuff at all. But she loves old school sitcoms like I Love Lucy, and she loves stuff like Twin Peaks. So her watching WandaVision has convinced her to start watching movies like Age of Ultron.
Wow. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Every time you finish a WandaVision episode, they recommend Age of Ultron.
Right, and like the theory that Hayward is Ultron, I can only imagine that might have something to do with it,
He could be an LMD for Ultron. I think that's a solid theory. It could be he's working for the Ultron AI. I think that's a solid theory. Whatever it is he wanted the Vision body for, it could be something as standard as, oh, we're making a new weapon. Like, Vision was revolutionary. We need more of those. We need a whole army of those. Or it could be something as sinister as, like, oh, we got this guy in the background who wants this stuff built up again, and while some other big baddie wants Vision's body for something else. Like, you don't know. It could be, I don't know, there's a lot of cool stuff there, I think. And I hope that we get a bulk of those reveals next week. But so far, the way that they're going, it's possible that we're going to have to wait until the very last minute, basically, to get any of that stuff. Like the very last episode, before everything is kind of laid bare.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. And it's possible they could even end it on a cliffhanger, especially if they're going to do a secret epilogue. I think the ending on a cliffhanger could be very possible.
Yeah.
But the secret epilogue just feels like a conspiracy theory. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but when Sherlock came out and when Supernatural came out with their last episodes, Tumblr did not believe they were the real last episodes because they were so fucking shitty.
Oof. Yeah, right? I do remember something like that being mentioned, because I used to watch Supernatural, but I got out of it.
So let's just hope that's not the case here.
Yeah, I hope not.
Well, with all that being said, this feels like a good place to wrap things up.
Yep, it's been nice.
I appreciate you joining me here, Ben.
Yeah, it's been great. This was actually really fun. We should do it sometime in the future. I love batting these theories around and getting this stuff out. Not just to work through my own theories, but to see, bounce them off someone, see if they hold water. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the best thing about these shows. Like they're water cooler TV.
Yeah.
You didn't get that with like Flash or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything, but you get it here.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's been good.
Yeah.
I guess we'll close things out, and I'll catch y'all later.